Hey everybody, it is the Sunday show on the line. It is Seth Andrews, Promise Backlund. So glad you're here and so good to see you again, Promise, my friend. Author, now
You
officially
too.
published author. Congrats. Congratulations to you. That's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. It feels so nice. I don't know if you felt this way after a book would come out, but just like, oh, like I've had enough people, share their thoughts about the book to where I feel like it's accomplishing what I wanted it to accomplish. It's getting the message as clear as I was hoping it would be. And now I feel like, oh, I can chill out a little bit.
I remember screenshotting the ranking when it came out, and it was like it appeared at a very specific spot, and I was like, yes. And so, shameless promoter of myself, I'm grabbing it, going, yes. Look, it's above this book from one of the new atheists, which of course had been out for a decade, but I don't care. I don't care. It's over them, And so I was doing that. I saw you. It went up there. So I was like, oh, that's feel good. So
I was really excited when its pre-orders were outselling JD Vance's pre-orders under the religious category. Because I just hope that at least somebody on his team had to be like, yeah, you're at number 6, right under Gospel of Lies.
I love it. Have any apologists found you yet? Have you found, I know it's common for people to go into Amazon reviews or whatever review comment, and you can tell they haven't even cracked the book. They certainly didn't buy the book, but they have an opinion about the book, and it's usually coming after you for being a sinful heathen. So have you found any one-star apologists who've drive-by'd your page yet?
Yeah, there's one star so far that which now I'm sure people will get some idea, but I think that's going to keep happening. But they called it a quote piece of work, but they spelled peace, P-E-A-C-E. And said that I was destroying something for everybody. So
I use those. I actually put a marketing campaign around the bad reviews from apologists. They're like, this book sucks. So I just grab that and in 60-point font, this book sucks, Bob from Milwaukee. The reviews are in. Or, some of the more tepid ones like, this is mediocre. I can't recommend it. And I just put that in 60-point font. This book is a mediocre read. Skip it if you can, John. And then I use that. I figure just turn it on its ear and have some fun with it, right? It's the best revenge. I
mean, that's what a lot of our content is, I think, is just highlighting the ridiculousness of some responses that we get from some religious extremists. So on the other side of that, I'm hoping that today we actually get to talk to some theists that maybe want to engage in an honest conversation and share their reason why they believe in a God, and if they think it's a good enough reason for you or I to believe.
It stands to reason, right? If it's good enough of a reason for you, then you should be able to say it's a good enough reason for other people. And I can examine, I can explain, I can make it easy to understand for anybody who asks me. And I don't feel like that's a tall order, Promise. But for many people, I hear they'll engage and they'll like, well, I know it's true, but I just can't explain how. And I might have been that guy 30 years ago. It's a matter of faith. It's a personal relationship because it's out of the natural. It's difficult to qualify and quantify in mortal language. But if we stop and think about it, like it's true because I believe it, but I can't demonstrate how it's true, it's kind of problematic. So if you believe, we'd like to know. And I promise that Promise and I will engage respectfully and in goodwill and in good faith as long as you do. And we'd like to be challenged. I'd like to hear a fresh argument, Promise. I would like to hear a fresh argument, except the guy What
I
did he call
agree.
in last week? And he said that consciousness travels on light beams. That was a new one. I hadn't heard that one before.
Okay, I'm jealous that you got to hear a new one.
I didn't know what that meant.
Somebody, someone just asked me the other day, like, what's been a fun argument for God you've heard lately? And they've been the exact same ones for so long. But if maybe somebody has the same argument we've heard, but better, maybe you have a more honest version of it. Maybe you had a personal experience that's so compelling that there's no way we wouldn't be like, oh, I believe now too. Chances of that one are kind of slim to none, but you never know.
Well,
You never know. We
and
don't
if
know
we
what
get
we
a
don't
really
know.
bad call, I have the finger ready. Now, this has been
Can you share?
this has
I
been
think I
like
saw
this
your post, but
for two
what's
weeks.
happening?
And I just say, when I do this, it's out of my control. It's just, I cannot bend the fingers. So I've had people, like, instead of high-fiving me, they want to do like we played poker with friends last night. And so whenever I won a big hand, they're like, I don't know why we thought it was funny, but no, and it's not a huge deal. But we had a pipe break in the house downstairs. There was an outdoor
That's
spigot
right.
that's in a wall that's adjacent to Natalie's little front office, and we didn't see the break. We happened to be home, but it flooded the front of the house for about 2 hours. And I walked in and I just see a lake. And so the wood in the front entry and her office and the master dining
Oh
ruined.
my God.
It's all first world
That's the
problems. I
worst.
get it.
That, yeah, but that feeling, in that moment, it is the only world problem that you're having. And so
It
it
is.
feels like the worst possible thing
It
you
is.
have to
And
deal
it's just
with now.
like, oh my God. So I throw the front door open and I've got this floor, it's kind of a squeegee that we used to get water out of the garage, clean the garage and whatnot. And as I was rushing the water out the door, I just slipped, fell on the hand, cracked the knuckle. So it's a mild break, and I'm supposed to wear this damn thing for 4 to 6 weeks. That ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
But for
I
now,
would just
it
go
kind of
back to
is what it is.
bed.
I'm typing with 9 fingers. That's been wacky. Um, but anyway, if I
Yeah,
show this, if it happens, it's not my fault. It's not.
you're just waving and you forgot to bring the other
You
fingers with
should
you.
see the downstairs of my house right now. They ripped the damaged floor out, so it's all jacked up concrete with pock marks, and my floor looks like the moon. And now it's, how much will they pay for, and how much is the deductible? And now we just have to re-insulate, and then the drywall's damaged, so you got to do that. And it's going to be another few weeks. They're going to move us out for a few days because we can't be in the house while they stain because there's nowhere to walk and blah blah blah. Anyway, it's,
You
again,
know why this happened, right?
because I'm in sin.
It's obviously because you're an atheist and God is punishing you. That's how it goes. If
It
something
is
good
true.
happens to you next week, that is also because you're an atheist. That's the devil rewarding you for following him. That's how this works, right?
I it's funny. I've heard that when it comes to health calamities. If you are injured in some way, you didn't have God's, what they call God's hedge of protection. And, people who are, when Christopher Hitchens died of esophageal cancer, there were a lot of apologists who were like, well, he didn't have God's protection. Meanwhile, I'm thinking of a local he's a mega pastor known nationally, and he got cancer and he was dead before he hit 50. And in his case, it was, well, you know, pain in this life, joy in the next. Light and momentary affliction is producing for us an eternal glory that far outweighs him all. One day we will be reunited. Everything happens for a reason, mysterious ways. God called him home. And it was a totally different narrative for the same kind of thing that happened. And this pastor died younger than Hitch. And that double standard interests me quite a bit, promise. So,
Yeah, it's wild. I grew up in the kind of faith where we believed that, we could do any of the miracles that Jesus did. And so several times when somebody would die, we were supposed to pray that they would be resurrected. That was the thing.
no.
I witnessed this multiple times. Yeah, really crazy.
Wait,
As a
hang
kid,
on.
it was
I'm sorry,
pretty
promise.
traumatic.
I'm sorry. You were praying to
Yes.
raise the dead?
Yes. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. And always what ended up happening is, because here's the thing, they didn't want to say like, oh, well, we didn't have enough faith because it was the pastors that were praying. And they're like, well, I know I have enough faith. So what happened, what the explanation was every time was that that was a seed God was planting for future miracles, as though somehow that makes any sense at all. But there was always, so they'd start off the prayers like literally praying out loud, like, you know, God, you said greater works than, I can't remember the exact quote, but that basically they're like proclaiming, we can raise people from the dead because you said if you have faith of a mustard seed, say to this mountain, it will move and it will move. So we're saying to this mountain of death, move, you know, all kinds of prayers like that. And they would say it's going to happen. Like God commands it, so it's going to happen. It's his will for this person to live. And then, you know, you fast forward, they're still dead. And it's obviously because God was planting a seed. Somebody didn't have faith, whatever wacky reason.
I have
Every
somebody
time.
on my family tree who has multiple sclerosis. And I shouldn't have brought it up this way, but I was just feeling kind of confrontational about it. It's something that keyed me up. And I was like, if I have to hear one more person getting the shit kicked out of them talk about how Jesus is love, right? And so I said, look, do you believe that God loves you unconditionally? Yes. Do you believe God has counted the hairs on your head, as it says in the New Testament, and that you are worth more than any sparrow that might fall from the sky, and that whatever you ask in God's name, he will do it, that the Father might be glorified in the Son? Prayer answered. Do you believe that? Yes. Why do you still have MS? And I don't know if it was right to ask this question, but I did. And she said, and I will never forget it, she said, well, it's a fallen world, and I know I'm a sinner. And I thought, she is now taking onto herself a kind of victim blame for not being a good enough person to warrant God's healing hand. She's blaming
That's so
herself
awful.
for a disease that she had no control over. And I found that when I think about it today, it just makes my blood boil,
Yeah.
because that is one of the many apologetics that we do here is, well, man sinned. And if we were just not so icky and wicked, God could do more in our lives and we would experience all of the manifestations of healing and blessing. If we don't, I didn't have enough faith. I find that really sinister. So that's just me.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what we get told a lot here on the show too, is that we just need to have faith. We'll become Christians if we just have faith. Well, can someone call in and tell me how to get there? Because I'm unconvinced. I don't believe. And I don't understand what this word faith is actually supposed to mean, because to me it just means believe this without a good reason. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to believe something that I don't have a good reason to believe, personally.
I see two calls on the call line that dialed in and disappeared, and they hung up. I would welcome your call, and I would encourage you to call
Yeah.
back. Let's talk about God. Let's talk about spirits. Let's talk about heaven and hell. Let's talk about moving on, a posthumous existence, reincarnation, or even if you're a non believer and you have a compelling conversation about the conversations. I know some people are like theists only. I'm not that guy. I just think if you're a compelling call that our viewers can relate to, that get into belief and why we believe. I'll take non-believers. I'll take an atheist, agnostic, spiritual, none, whatever. But we do want to speak to you. Here's the one that cooks my noodle promise. I have to have the Holy Spirit to understand what God meant. And I'm like, okay, well, how do you get the Holy Spirit? You get that when you accept Jesus. But I'm like, well, how do I understand if the gospel message is worth accepting if I can't access the Holy Spirit that explains why it's worth accepting? So I would have to get saved to understand why I should get saved. I've never
Just
understood
plug
that argument at all.
just plug the plug back into itself and you'll get power somehow, you know? That's totally how this goes. Yeah,
Just
that one is really wild to me. Or of course, the very popular, you were never a believer to begin with. Okay, cool. What I don't, you can think what you want about me. I know that I believed that the Christian God was real. I believed that Jesus Christ was my savior. I believed that I was a sinner in need of redemption. I prayed the prayer multiple times, actually. And I was baptized and I received the gift of tongues and I did, you name it. But inevitably, there's the Christian that shows up. Oh, wait, you spoke in tongues. So that was heretical. So that's why it wasn't real. Or there's the, oh, you weren't Catholic. That's what you did wrong. Like there's so many precise little things you have to get exactly right. And nobody can agree on what those things are, which is really fun. But maybe a Christian can call in and explain to us what is the exact right way to have faith and believe. And how do they know that that's the exact right way?
Thomas and I can fill for as long as, we're professional communicators, so we could probably fill, but we like to talk to you. The day of your baptism, you did the immersion, right? Yeah,
which one?
They dunk you?
I think I was baptized over 5 times. In fact, one time I was baptized in the Jordan River in Israel.
No shit. You went to the Holy Lands?
I did. I went to both of Jesus's tombs. They were both empty.
Was there a gift shop out front and some guy going, get your crucifixion nails, only $29.99 autographed kind of thing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was happening. Honestly, that trip, I was about 16, 17 years old. That was a big thing that got me questioning a lot. It started, some seeds were planted. We'll use their language
why
of doubt.
The multiple baptisms? Were you recommitting your faith because you thought you may have lost your salvation? This is common outside of the Protestant Baptist Church. They say forever saved, right? Once saved, always saved.
Yeah.
But when you get into more the evangelicals, the Assemblies of God, rather, and the Pentecostals, they believe that you can lose your salvation and you have to reset. Was that it? Because I think you were more along those lines, right?
At the time, I would have said that that's why, and I also was a pastor's daughter. So a lot of times, if I didn't do something, my friends wouldn't do it, and I was the good example. So, hey, who wants to get baptized? I'll raise my hand again because I know that a bunch of other people will then want to do it as well, because that was just my place in the social circle. And what I was told, I was supposed to be the good example. The other thing that I would say now, and I didn't even know then, OCD will absolutely make you think that you should get baptized over and over and over again. So that was
the day of, all right, pick a baptism, because I remember it was a tiny little suburb of Tulsa, Assembly of God Church that my mom went to. So I sort of got 31 flavors. My dad was ex-Lutheran. I went to a Baptist school. Mom was Pentecostal. So we got a little bit of everything. And my church experience reflected that. And I remember the morning that I was supposed to go into the church service, they did baptisms once a month. And I was terrified. I wasn't excited. It's not like I can't wait to go and affirm my faith and profess it in front of everybody. I was scared.
Was it one of those where it's like at the front of the church?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. For those who don't know what the experience is like, by the way, I just got a message in from Lux. I need to encourage everyone to like and share the broadcast. Share it on your channels. Let believers in your orbit know that we are here and waiting for you and your calls. So at the front, and this was it was almost a small town Pentecostal church with the wooden pews and the hymnals slotted in the pews and the old hymns. This wasn't like praise and worship songs of today. We weren't doing Hillsong and shit like that. And right behind where the pastor's podium was an elevated area with the baptismal, and it had a curtain on it. And so on Baptism Sunday, you would actually have to go behind the stage. You would go behind the walls. There were stairwells. And so you went up the stairwell and you waited hidden behind each side of the baptismal wall. And there was an actual pool of warm water there. I don't know how clean it was. I didn't smell chlorine. But we would wait. And then the pastor would come down and he's standing chest deep in water. You would put on a white robe over whatever clothes that you had to put clothes on. Otherwise, it was a wet T-shirt contest. So you had something on underneath. And then he would bring you and he would hold you. He'd hold the back of your head, and he had a handkerchief for your face. And he's like, Seth has come to affirm his faith in Jesus Christ. Do you affirm that Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior and you've accepted him into your heart? Yes, I do. I now baptize you in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost or Holy Spirit. And he takes that freaking napkin over your face. He dunks you, holds you under for a second, and everybody in the audience goes, amen, amen, or they applaud. And then you go back to dry off, and you have now been baptized, which is a command out of the Bible. But I never got comfortable with it. I was never happy about it. It always sat funny with me. I don't know. Were you happy about your professions in that way?
I remember a couple of times being happy about it, a couple of times feeling really awkward. It was always cold, and to this day, I hate getting into cold water. I don't like it. Yeah, that was beyond cold. That was absolutely disgusting water. Like that was one of the dirtiest, grossest. And there was hundreds of people being baptized right there. So I'm like, what is in this water? People are peeing in it for sure. There's no way they're not.
Yes.
So I don't know. I think to me, I remember at least one time where I felt like, okay, I'm really, doing this. I'm in it, whatever. And then I remember a lot of the other times feeling like, wow, I'm being a really good pastor's daughter right now. And it was always awkward for me because my dad was the pastor. So he was the one baptizing me. And I'm like, he's the one asking me like if I want to affirm my faith this way. And I'm like, yes, you know that. And I don't know why that was always awkward for me. So I don't know. We didn't have this like fancy ceremony. It was usually like some guy playing guitar, somebody had a bathtub, a pool, a Jordan River, something like that. And it was gross. And I had to wear like a large t-shirt. So it was a little less glamorous sounding than yours.
For some reason, the calls that are coming into the switchboard are queuing up, and then they're failing. And that may be a technical issue, Lux. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe we need to test it.
All right. Well, you let me know.
But meanwhile, if you are a theist, we'll take some atheist callers if we don't have theists holding, which right now is a great time if you are an atheist caller and you have something specific, a question you want to ask us. But we will prioritize theist callers who want to explain to us what God they believe in and why they believe that God exists, and if we should believe that God exists. The number is 1-720-619-2288. Like I said, if you're a theist, you will get to the top of the list. But yeah, we can totally, I'm like you, I'm happy to take whatever kind of callers if there is a point to the call. I think sometimes...
Promise is going to grace my channel later on in the Thinking Atheist channel later on this week as we talk in depth more about the book that she's released and some of the stuff that she and I just talk about. I put her on camera. Was it last year that we sat down or the year before?
It was at American Atheist.
Yeah. She's always fun to talk about. I was going to bring this up to you just because being a woman in an activist space, in a public space. And I thought of you and maybe a dozen other people when I was watching. And I got to talk a little politics as we wait for the call page to populate. But did you see Meet the Press reporter Kristen Welker talking to Donald Trump this morning?
No, I saw somebody posting about it, but I don't know what happened exactly.
It was beautiful, but it also really, really shone a spotlight on one of the challenges that I think females especially have in a frontline space. So Kristen Welker is challenging Donald Trump, for him, something is true by declaration. Anything can vomit out of his mouth, and it's true. And then he always says, you ask anybody, the evidence is everywhere. It's true. And then he goes after whoever's challenging him, and he calls them every name in the book, whether it's, you're scum or you're fake or you're the worst or you're a piggy or whatever. And he was talking about how the elections were all rigged. We have the most corrupt system in the world. He speaks only in hyperbole. Everything is best, worst, greatest, worst. And she wasn't having it. And she's like, well, there's no evidence for any of that, sir. And then she would try to push the conversation back. And he hates being challenged, but he really hates being challenged by a woman. And he walked. I think she spent 5 minutes just no bullshit. Like, no, I'm not going to let you skate on this. That's untrue. Show me the evidence for your claim. There is no evidence. Okay, well then we know that there is no evidence. And he's like, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me. And finally, he just said, "Fuck it." He didn't say that, but he took off his mic and he just left. And I'm cheering, and I'm like, "More
Wow.
of this, please, more, please."
That's
And
like what happens on the show sometimes, I think.
yeah, well, I mean, you and I've done shows together. They treat many people treat you differently than
Yeah.
they treat
Yep.
me.
Yep.
And
I don't even think it's a conscious decision necessarily. They'll be interrupting you, interrupting me over and over again, or just not even letting me talk at all, and then listening to whoever the man is on the screen.
excuse me,
And then get mad and say I'm being emotional.
excuse me, and that's a terrible argument because we look at the dudes who've run everything for the last 250 years in this country. I mean, what's a track record? Like, you know what I'm saying? Almost complete, with a very few exceptions, white dudes have run stuff for 2.5 centuries. How are we doing? I think maybe it's time to recognize that half of the population does not have a penis, and we should maybe, direct. We are not a representative government. I was talking about the Supreme Court and how the majority of I don't know what the ratio of Catholics in the population is, but the Supreme Court, I believe 6 of the 9 are Catholic. How is that a court representative of the United States? In the
Right.
Congress, I think upwards of 90% of elected officials at least profess some sort of relationship with Christianity. But throughout the country, our citizens see the rise of the nun. Roughly, 38% say they're religiously unaffiliated. How are the Congress people somehow representing our government when 9 out of 10 say that they represent a faith? That
Right.
bugs me. We do not live in a representative democracy. And that's one of the
Yeah.
huge problems that we face. So,
Yeah. I actually wrote a little bit about that in my book. This idea that, which you and I both know this well from our time thinking this was true. This whole idea that Christians are so persecuted in the US, that they're just losing rights or they don't have rights and everyone's just out to get them. And meanwhile, they're the most represented group in the US. If you're religious, then you're most likely to have somebody not just in DC representing you, but even in your small town, in your state, wherever you are fully represented. So to claim that you're not, and that somehow secularism is taking over America, we are unfortunately so far from that being true.
which is a great segue. And I see the caller dialing in. Give me just a second. We will get to you. It is Pride Month. And we are seeing this massive pushback by people who were like, why would we have to do this? My own governor, Kevin Stitt, saw that Sesame Street had said, "Happy Pride Month. We welcome and love everybody, and we want to celebrate you." And he's like, "This is why Sesame Street should not be funded publicly. This is wrong. The nuclear family, God, 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 Jesus, God, Bible, whatever." And he's a Christian nationalist, and his positions are just garbage. And I'm hearing a lot of this. Why don't we have a straight Pride Month? And
Oh my God.
I posted online, there's a great graphic. I wish I'd given it to Lux to put it on screen. But it said, highlighted below in red are all the nations where it's illegal to be heterosexual. And it was one of those flat world maps, and nothing, of course, was highlighted in red. And so I wrote 3 short paragraphs. Let me read it. I said, today, let me move this to where I can actually see it. Today, 64 nations have made non-heterosexuality illegal. Many nations like Iran, Uganda, Qatar, they carry penalties of prison or death. In fact, I think the death penalty is mandated specifically in those 3 and other nations. In the U.S., LGBT people live under the constant shadow of discrimination, ridicule, and potential danger. Sermons are preached against them. Overcompensating guys call them every slur in the book. Preachers call them sodomites. Conservatives want to strip them of their right to marry, their right to equality, their right to humanity. That's why so many of us want to celebrate marginalized groups. The privileged class already has 365 days a year. And I felt like that was a pretty good way of summing up the difference. If you are a marginalized group,
that's great.
we do want to take a second and focus on you, because the privileged class gets 365 days a year, and they have on the order of perhaps thousands of years. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, and to me, the other side of it is, what's the point of holidays and celebratory months other than, possibly raising awareness for something? It's an excuse to celebrate, and it's an excuse for joy. That's one of the fun things about being a human, is we get to just kind of decide this day is going to be special, or this month, or whatever, and assign, Christmas has red and green, and now Pride Month has, I love it, just the bright colors everywhere. I think it's so fun. I think it's such a beautiful thing to celebrate. Like you said, a group of people that have been attacked and are still being attacked to this day, and just got the right to get married not very long ago at all in the US. And other somewhat progressive countries still don't even have the right to adopt, and other basic things that heterosexual couples have access to. So why in the world would it bother you to have a moment of celebration, other than if you have some dogmatic religious reason, and you think that there's some God who cares about what consenting adults do, and who they love, which is so absolutely wild. But he cares a lot about foreskins, so I guess he also cares about grown adults having a romantic relationship of their choosing.
I have so far seen no fewer than 6 people dial in and disappear. I think we may have a glitch. Please continue to try. The number is on the screen. We would love to speak to you. This is something we see in the holiday months. Between December and the end of January, I think there are 9 different holidays, Christmas included. But mostly when we see somebody protesting, Jesus is the reason for the season. It's all about Jesus Christ only. It's his birthday. And I think these are people who simply don't want to share their world. What does it take away from you if someone else says happy holidays? To be inclusive. What does it take away from you if somebody celebrates a different thing in the month of December or January, and they accept that and celebrate it in their own lives, over their own thresholds of their homes and their families and friend circle? What does that take away from you? And I think persecuted's the great word. These people are desperate to be victims. In the Bible, it says, Christ said, "Blessed are you who are persecuted for my sake." And I think first of all, I think people use the victim and persecution card to keep from being challenged and to excuse bigotry and intolerance. But secondly, I think that the privileged class has had it so freaking easy that they aren't good Christians unless they're being persecuted, right? If the devil doesn't care about me, I must not be doing God's good work. So a good Christian, well, he's the one who's being attacked for his faith. And that sort of elevates my equity as a believer. There are a lot of reasons people play the card. They're all bullshit, but it's something that we do see quite a bit. I see a call, Promise. Should we attempt it?
Yes.
Okay.
I loved what you were saying still, but also,
I'm
yes.
telling Promise and I could just, if we were over coffee, the hours would fly. We walked so many of the same steps. How do I pronounce your name? Is it Martin?
Martin, yeah.
Martin, out of the UK, welcome to the broadcast. You're talking to Promise and Seth. What's on your mind?
Thanks. I should say that I do have guests coming around shortly, so I may only have about 10 minutes, but I wanted to talk to you about the issue of so-called privilege. And particularly the privileges that you think sort of Christians might have in the US.
I'm going to back you off your phone just a little bit because we have some distortion. And
I also, just to real quick ask you, because this will help. Have you been to the US? What's the most amount of time you've spent in the US?
I've been to the US before. I've been to Ohio, and I haven't spent much time there overall, but I have relatives in Ohio.
How long? How long were you in Ohio for?
Oh, just for like summer holidays and stuff. I wasn't there for like work or anything.
Like, are we talking like 2 months? Or are we talking like a week?
Oh, just like a few weeks in terms of how long I've been in the US for.
Okay.
And how long
Okay,
ago?
All right.
Oh, that was a while back. Yeah, it hasn't been in the last few years. I've been in Europe the last few years.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I follow
We are
US
a quiver, Martin. So what's your perspective on privilege?
In the
don't think
US for Christians.
Yeah, I mean, the word privilege comes from the Latin privus, which means private, and then lex or leg, which means law. So it means essentially private law. And so I tend to only use the term privilege when there are explicit laws which guarantee superior rights for others. So I would use the term white privilege if discussing.
It's illegal.
Yeah.
I'm just concerned that we're going to have this conversation where you just have zero idea what you're talking about. Do you know that in many states, it's a requirement that you be a theist? You cannot be an atheist. It's in the state constitutions.
To hold public
So
office.
there's to hold public office.
No, you guys have the First Amendment, which prevents an established faith. So the Constitution takes precedent over state law. If the states are violating the Constitution, then ultimately the Constitution comes first. So
I'm just letting you know. You said there weren't laws. There are. Just going ahead and letting you know that. But continue. I don't agree with your. Yeah, the definition of privilege. But Seth, you go ahead. That's
the etymology of privilege and its usage today are not necessarily the same thing. Language is fluid. Words have usages, and those usages do change. When we talk about privilege, I'm not talking about privilege in the sense that you are, and I'd wager almost no one is. I think you can use it in the way that you wish as long as you define it. But Promise and I and others are not locked into your definition of the word based on the etymology of it.
Well, I can read out the Merriam-Webster definition, which is a right, exemption, or immunity.
You can read it. You can read it off, and we're just telling you we don't agree. So then we can agree to disagree on what privilege is if you want. But if you're just going to come on here and straw man our position, then what's the point?
Well, I mean, the current day dictionary definition may be different than the origin of the word. Read the Merriam for me, just so I know where you're coming from.
Right, exemption, or immunity granted as a particular benefit, advantage, or favor. So that's the Merriam-Webster definition.
I don't know if I take too much issue with that in the context of a tribe demographic group that is privileged and given preferential treatment. I don't know, Promise, is that unfair? Am I missing something?
No, I think that's probably right. I mean, for example, you can show up at work and, anywhere in the South and wear a cross necklace. You can have, Jesus is King as your bumper sticker and all of that. If you showed up and you asked for time during the day to, let's say, pray to the Muslim God, and you needed to, have time off to do that at certain times of the day or whatever, or you needed to, have a holiday for that, you are not going to see that privilege most of the time. So we're talking about social and cultural privilege primarily, not necessarily political privilege, although, as we just pointed out, you're more likely to be represented in political office if you're a Christian, because almost no one in office is an atheist, at least that we know of, because if they were to say they're atheist, that's already going to cause them to lose the campaign almost everywhere.
Well, is that the discretion of the electorate how they vote? If you were in a Muslim majority country and most people voted for Muslims, that's not eroding the rights of Christians.
Cool. And then wouldn't you say that? And then Muslims would have the most privilege in that country. You're making my point for me.
Not necessarily. No. If Muslims are in office, that doesn't mean necessarily they're going to take advantage and put Christians in a subordinate position. It's entirely possible there'll be Muslims who will behave in an egalitarian way. So I don't accept that just because it's Muslim.
Can you give me an example of an Islamic nation that does not give preferential treatment to Islam?
Turkey. Turkey.
How explain it to me. Educate me about Turkey.
I don't know of any laws in Turkey that explicitly prioritize the rights of Muslims. It's legal to have churches in Turkey. I've met
Hang
people
on.
who have worked in Turkey.
If we go back to the letter of the law in our godless constitution, we could argue the same thing here, that nothing gives preferential treatment to Christians. But in the culture, the way people are behaving, the way they are thinking, the way they are being miseducated, the way they are voting and acting, they are implementing a Christian privilege. So, I mean, you can point to words on a paper, but I'm talking about the culture itself. Promise is right. We've got like Ilhan Omar, and we've got the very few people, let's say, of a Muslim faith. They are now in this country being vilified by the Christian nationalists as jihadists, being really treated like animals, enemies of this nation, for one reason: they are Muslim. Well, that's Christian privilege.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I understand it, Omar did make quite condescending remarks about Israel. I think she said something about Israel having hypnotized the world. I'm just trying to find the exact quotation that she posted on social media.
Yeah, okay, do you want to talk about Israel? Because now it seems like you want to talk about that, because that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah,
and whether or not she's Muslim or not is different than criticizing Israel.
Right.
There's overlap.
Yeah, but not all criticism of a Muslim politician is necessarily going to be unacceptable, discriminatory, or unpleasant. So if she's going to make remarks,
I didn't say that.
About
they called Mamdani a jihadist over and over and over again. I'm sorry, that's super showing their colors of bigotry. So that's a ridiculous point. We need to define real quick what we're talking about when we talk about privilege, because you keep trying to drag it back to the law. I am talking about cultural, social privilege that Christians have in the US. Specifically, they have holidays, so then they have the time off over other people of different religions. They have you can go find Christian stores all over the US. You can find a Bible in pretty much any store where they sell books. You can find you can wear, like I said, a cross. You can practice prayer. You can stand on a street corner and preach. You can pick from 15 different churches in one little town. Pick exactly which one you like and which one you want, and go at the time you like and which pastor style you like. The privilege is being had by the Christians. I grew up in the South.
Okay.
The first thing somebody asks you when they meet you is, what church do you go to? They don't ask you if you're even religious or not. They assume that you are, and they ask what church you belong to.
Okay, but which of those do you want to ban, change, or outlaw? Do you want to make it illegal to sell Bibles, to ask people which church they go to? Which of those do you think we should stamp out as a society?
Why did you jump to that?
Did she say anything about stamping anything out, Martin?
Insane.
I didn't hear any of that. She's talking about preferential treatment. In my own hometown, 20 miles from here, they wanted to build a mosque. There was a Muslim community, wanted to build a mosque. And members of the entire community banded against them, and they found a bunch of bullshit reasons not to approve the zoning for construction. Now, if that had been a Baptist church, a Pentecostal church, hell, even a Catholic church, I guarantee you that thing would already be under construction. That's privilege.
I would argue it doesn't necessarily constitute privilege, because they're not actually changing the law. They're expressing opposition.
Then you're trying to argue something different than we are. This is such a bizarre call to me. You're calling in from the UK. You've been to Ohio one time for, I don't know, an undetermined amount of short time. And now we're suddenly remembering that you were also in New Jersey. Still, I don't understand how we're talking about a cultural, societal privilege that Christians have in the US. You have the privilege of people knowing about your religion and knowing exactly what you mean when you say, oh, yes, God bless you today. They know exactly what you mean. They know exactly what your belief is. That is a huge privilege. I had to keep it a secret that I was an atheist from most of the people I was working around, because it would have been so offensive to them. And I was worried about losing my job because I had a Christian boss at one point. That's a privilege. And none of my Christian coworkers had to worry about that. They came in wearing crosses every day. If I had ever worn any kind of atheist symbol, I had like a little A necklace, actually. I had to take it off before I went to work.
I think much of this ignores the reality that discrimination usually happens between the lines of the law.
Okay, those are interesting points. In terms of the UK, most people here are atheists. I would estimate at least 3/4 of my work colleagues are atheists. Would you agree that in the UK, and I wouldn't agree with this statement, but would you, atheist privilege?
I don't
In the
think
UK, I have no idea. I haven't spent enough time there or talked to enough atheists over there.
Finland, where you are, does Finland have atheist privilege?
you're cutting out, Mark. I'm losing your call, my friend, and I can't hear your question.
Yeah, so in European countries, are you in Scandinavia at the moment?
You're cutting out so bad. I can't make out any of the words that you're saying. So I don't know if you walked away from where you were or what happened.
We have just a glitch in the line or something.
Yeah, it might be my signal, but
yeah, the Lord works in mysterious ways, Martin. Well, we can try one more time if you want to try to make your point. If the signal doesn't improve, we're probably going to have to move on or have you dial back. Okay.
Okay, cool. And I was just wondering, in an atheist majority country, would atheists then have privilege?
Is atheism a pro-action? Is like if I come in and I'm a Christian, then I am mandated by a religion to make converts, right? If you read the Bible, it is a dominionist book. As God gave dominion to Adam over the lands, go ye into all the world and make converts. We see people who are now saying God, they're invoking God to entrench themselves in power, to write the laws, etc. I don't believe in a God. More often lends itself into humanism, which is more the egalitarian position. Atheism is not by design dogmatic. Now, I'm not saying atheists are immune from dogmatism, but I'll tell you, if we saw a culture of non-belief, which is like, I don't know, Japan, etc., we're not seeing the theocratic overreach that we see in places like Yemen, Saudi Arabia, or even the United States.
Yeah, I mean, in a country where most people are Christian, you seem to argue that entails Christian privilege. So my claim is, would there be Hindu privilege in India? Would there be Islamic privilege
That's
in
not
Yemen?
even necessarily that's not even necessarily my argument, actually. I think this is a very, and that's all I can speak to, it's a very American evangelical thing that's happened. It has become part of our culture because I live in Finland right now, which is where I think 70% of people belong to the Lutheran Church. However, only 30% of people in Finland believe a God exists, so you do that math. But the way that religion plays out here, even amongst the religious people, there's zero comparison to how it plays out in the US. When I tell you it is so deeply ingrained in the identity of people, in the culture wars, in every single day life, in their capitalism, in their merch, in the statements that companies make, in the Bible verses printed on the bottom of cheeseburger wrappers at In-N-Out. It is absolutely everywhere in a way that I have not experienced in any of my travels, nor in any of my conversations with people that live in other countries. It is a very special American exceptionalist, American evangelical culture. That's what I'm arguing about, is that they have a very special privilege because they have found a way to marry it into every single bit of your experience living there.
Yeah, but I mean, people are express themselves in a country where people can't freely print Bible verses. That would not be a free country.
I can't hear you.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're at the point where we can't even attempt to understand what you're saying because it's cutting out so badly.
Martin, may the Lord bless you and keep you and make his face to shine upon you and be gracious.
Yeah, you can call back if you get a better line.
All right. So here's an example. Not that Martin's listening. He seemed to be answering questions or statements that you did not make. I don't know what conversation he was having, but you say this or I say that, and then he comes back and he's like, so you this or you that, you know. So in this country, someone's about to ring my doorbell, so hang on if the dogs go crazy. So in this country, the resistance to LGBT equality, gay marriage, trans rights, etc., is almost exclusively Christian. They wave their Bibles and they say, God, 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 right? Right now, who was it? J.D. Vance or someone else is wanting to make June month, Pride month, nuclear family month, right? And they're saying this is.
I think they did that in Tennessee, by the way. I think they actually officially changed it to that. Yes. Yeah,
In
continue.
my home state, our politicians wrote a law, House Bill, I think it's 1013, declaring Jesus is Lord of Oklahoma. It is now written into our books to identify one of the 50 states in a state church separated nation, right, in our Constitution. If you see the opposition to anything from the legalization of marijuana to our foreign policy when it comes to Muslim nations, the Muslim ban, etc., when we see positions being taken across the social spectrum in this country, I will bet at least 8 times out of 10, if you look at the person protesting, they are invoking the name of God, a specific God with a proper name attached to the Christian religion. That's Christian privilege. And so for Martin to not really get that because somewhere the word God wasn't written into the Constitution has nothing to say about where we are socially, culturally. I don't. Plus, what he did a freaking drive-by in the 50 states, and so now he's able to speak to what you and I have seen every day in this country. That makes no sense.
Well, and the other thing, I don't know about you, but the reason I point out this privilege is not because of what he said that you just corrected, like this idea that I want to ban, Bibles or something. It's not. I'm not on the side of people that want to ban books. Actually, that would be the Christians in the U.S. But the reason I point out that privilege is because of the hypocrisy of claiming that it's not happening when it is blatantly happening. So, like, this is, I don't know. I just feel like that call was not a very honest one for so many reasons. But I am impressed with the confidence behind taking on that topic. You're from the UK, you call in. One time you spent summer holiday in Ohio, and I guess your time in New Jersey you didn't even remember it until halfway through the call. So, and that told you all you need to know about Christian privilege.
Spent 2 weeks in Australia 10 years ago. Let me tell you what things are like today in Australia.
Right. I don't even like talking about Finland, and I've been living here a year, but I keep telling people, look, I can tell you my perspective. I can't speak for Finland because I don't know. I didn't grow up here. I'm still learning the ropes.
I see Nate on the switchboard. Hang on just a second. So I'm going to plug this because it fits in. I am in 2 days, my patrons have it, but I'm releasing a speech called Died and Risen, D-Y-E-D, as in dying a color, Died and Risen, the strange story of white Jesus. Now,
yes,
you want to talk about privilege in this country. We talk about how in the United States, in fact, worldwide, the most reproduced image of Jesus Christ, it's been used in Bibles and children's books and oil paintings and you name it. It's a painting of Jesus Christ with fair skin, blue eyes, and kind of blondish hair. And this is the American perception of Jesus Christ. And the idea that a first century Jewish man looked like that is pretty ridiculous. And in the speech, I go back and I talk about the fact that then the Bible doesn't describe Jesus physically at all. And then we get into Rome and how Christ looked like the Caesars, and we talk about different cultures and how their Jesus looked like them. There's a Muslim Jesus. There is a Native American Jesus. There's a Hindu Jesus. And an African American, a black Jesus. And I said, you know what? You want to talk about privilege? If I was to walk in and show a picture of a black Jesus to pretty much almost any, at least Baptist church in the Bible Belt, they would lose their mind.
Oh, yeah.
Right? They would lose their minds because they don't want to share the world with someone whose Christ looks like them. In thy image means only in my image. And they want to dictate what a personal Jesus is supposed to look like and do and say and think and want. Well, that's privilege. And it's power. And if they have the power to discriminate against an African American church or a Native American church or a Hindu or an Islamic or whatever, that's privilege. It doesn't seem that hard to me, promise. I don't think this is rocket science.
I don't know. On that note, I don't know if you just saw who they cast to be in the new the Passion movie, you know, they're doing the sequel because the resurrection. Did you see who they cast as Jesus?
I don't know. I didn't recognize his name.
It's a man from Finland. It's a Finnish man, and I don't know if you have seen my Finnish husband. Finns are. I look like some like crazy freak here because I have dark hair and dark eyes. They're like the most like I have to apply sunscreen on him multiple times a day just to make sure that he's okay in the summer.
He can
Talk
be
about
seen
white,
from face.
blonde, blue eyes.
Saying.
Yes.
Okay.
So like, and then you're putting this man is now supposed to play like, are they filming in the Middle East? I hope that they have a budget for sunscreen just for Jesus for this movie because, man,
look up
wild.
there was a guy. He was a medical artist and an illustrator. 25 years ago, he did a depiction for a BBC documentary about Jesus that's titled "Son of God." You may have, some people in the audience may have already seen it.
Yes.
If not, and it is an artist depiction using an unearthed skull from the region of what he thought Jesus might have looked like. Brown skin, kind of curly black hair, totally different. And I say in the speech, this looks like the kind of guy that ICE would throw in the back of a van and abduct and extradite to El Salvador or wherever, right? So our perceptions are based on what validates us. And if the ruling class, and I'm going to call Christian dominionists in this country the ruling class, if they get a chance to set the tone, to determine the laws, to do all that stuff, it's privilege. It's privilege. You want to talk to Nate? Promise we give this a shot?
Yeah, I would like to go ahead and warn him that he's going to need to pick a new talking point too, as far as like this exact precise one. Let's bring him on. Hey, Nate, you are on the Sunday show with Seth and Promise. How are you doing today?
Doing well. How are you guys doing?
Good. I just want to point something out because I pointed this out on the last call and maybe you just weren't listening, but you called in and it says majority rule does not equal privilege. That wasn't an argument that I made, nor something I think necessarily.
Okay. All right.
But if you have another point that you want to add on to any of that, I'd be happy to hear it.
Yeah, I haven't been listening to your whole show, so if you want to catch me up, what would then be your point exactly?
Well, I mean, they're leading worship in the White House regularly. I'm talking like arms raised, speaking in tongues, like hosting worship services. So my point is that there is absolutely privilege amongst Christians in the U.S. in every way possible, and my point in bringing that up was to point out the hypocrisy of the Christians in the U.S. who claim that they're being persecuted because they are demonstrably not being persecuted.
I'm not sure. So what are the points of a Christian who would say they're being persecuted? There are some laws in certain states. It's kind of
you'd have to go talk to them.
Like,
if you can tell me how you think Christians. Wait, no, Nate. Tell me, how do you think Christians are being persecuted in the U.S.? And I don't mean one specific little story. I mean, how are they in general being persecuted?
Oh, I mean, in general, they're not. The only example I could draw would be one of the Dakotas was the first state several years ago to make it anti-Semitic to preach the gospel because of the inherent difference between Judaism and Christianity. That'd be the only example.
You're going to have to read that law for me because I've heard no such thing.
Okay. I mean, if I would have time to look it up.
You got to bring receipts on that one. There's a law that says what? You can't do what? Or it's anti-Semitic? Just restate it so I'm sure I understand.
As far as I know, it no longer gave you the benefit or the privilege of freedom of speech in public spaces to preach the gospel, considered it hate speech, anti-Semitic hate speach to preach that Jesus is the Messiah and things like that.
That's
okay. You
bullshit.
Well, I'm not saying that we're persecuted. I'm just saying that's the only thing I've ever even heard of. That,
if you're going to invoke a law I think you're going to have to be able to tell me specifically what that law is and verify that it exists. I can guarantee you in this country, if there was an instance where someone went outside and shared their faith publicly and they were called anti Semitic, Fox News would have that as its lead story 24/7. You know?
I'll do you one. I'll do you one better. I actually just searched, is there a law in the Dakotas about preaching the gospel? And all these news articles came up about a controversial Christian nationalist legislation where they are constitutionally acknowledging the kingship of Jesus in they're trying to change part of their law. Unconstitutionally trying to change part of their law to acknowledge the kingship of Jesus.
That law was authored, by the way. That's a different law than sharing your faith in public. That is doing what Oklahoma was attempting to do, which is to embed Jesus language into the governmental policy and identity of the state. That law was struck down last year, not because Christians are being persecuted, but because that church, or that state rather, is not a church, and it's certainly not a Christian church. So it didn't pass.
Right, because that would have been absurd to pass it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry if you feel persecuted or offended, someone of a Christian majority country
Nate, remind me why I said I pointed out the privilege. What was the reason I said I was pointing out that privilege? Was I saying it because it hurts my feelings? Was I saying it because I think that means I'm persecuted? What was the reason I said I wanted to point out their privilege?
Want the hypocrisy of a Christian who says that they're persecuted. Yes. Right.
So my response is to anybody who wants to claim that Christians are just not having any rights, or they're saying that they are, that the U.S. is just being taken over by secularism, or these claims that as a Christian they're just so persecuted, when in fact they have a large amount of privilege in the U.S., more so than any other religious group or non-religious.
I mean, I know you say you grew up in the South. I mean, did you feel that these Christians who were asking you where you went to church or saying God bless you, or they felt persecuted in their life in general?
So when I was a Christian, I very much believed that Christians were persecuted. I was taught that. I was taught that I needed to be ready to die for my faith because there was a strong probability that someday somebody would put a gun to my head and say, do you believe in God, yes or no? And that it would be up to me to profess my faith in that moment. That was like a huge thing in the 90s, actually, that they were talking to us about in church. They were talking about how being a Christian is it's so scary, and people will come after you and they'll hate you because you love Jesus. And this was very much part of my upbringing, and I very much believed it. And so did all of the people around me, not just in the South, but also in California, where I lived for a while and was a worship leader at a mega church there.
Okay, and what kind of group would this threat have come from in these situations?
I don't understand the question. Can you rephrase?
Yeah, look, this is part of the model. They tell you that one nation under God is under attack by the godless. And that umbrella can be anybody. It can be Muslims, it can be Hindus, it can be Sikhs, it certainly is Satanists, atheists, etc. Right? They want to
other Christians.
They want to take God out of schools. They want to take prayer out of. They want to make it illegal. When I was in Christian radio, we used to play a song by this guy. His name is Morgan Cryer, and the song was called "Pray in the USA." And it was this big anthem where you're sticking your fist in the air. And it tells the story of how in school they made it impossible, illegal for someone to pray to Jesus Christ. And the vibe of the song was, you know what? They may call me a criminal, but I guess that's what I'm going to be in the name of Jesus. I will still pray in the USA. Persecution is baked in to fundamental Christianity.
I wouldn't exclude it to Christianity. I mean, as Americans, we've been subject to many types of tribalistic propaganda that seeks to divide us.
Nobody said that it is exclusive to evangelical Christians or to Christians in general. However, it is very much prominent, and it is literally in the teachings. It talks about it in the Bible that you'll be hated for your faith. So it's an actual teaching. I think that's the main important thing. I was just actually scrolling, part of my job, I have to sit and scroll on Christian TikTok. I came across so many TikToks that were talking about how persecuted Christians are and that we need to be praying, and that, I know that it's not cool to say you're a Christian, but I'm here to say it anyways. And I just saw video after video after video with hundreds of thousands of likes saying that. So
that's kind of a theological masturbation too, isn't it? Like, look at me. They're coming after me and my God, but I defiantly stand up and I will represent. And you can almost hear the hero soundtrack behind them. It's a manufactured crisis.
Nate, I'm wondering if you'd be down to have a different... US, maybe. I'm wondering if you'd be down to have a different conversation with us.
Okay, what kind of conversation?
Yeah, I'm wondering, it says you're a theist. Are you down to talk about that?
Sure.
Okay, cool. So are you a Christian?
Yeah, Christian, just Bible believing, Jesus loving Christian. I don't really subscribe to denomination or anything.
Okay, cool. I used to say the same thing, so we're already speaking a somewhat similar language. Do you think that other people should be a Christian?
Well, I mean, of course, it's their choice, but yeah, based
of course.
on
Do you think people should choose to be a Christian?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Do you mind sharing why? Are you okay if we go down that conversation path?
Sure. Basically, like, why am I a Christian? Like, what gives me belief in Christianity? Is that...
If that's what you think is a good reason, I would say, like, why do you think other people should, like, what should convince other people to want to be a Christian?
So, a lot of the problems that, let me just go around the circles real quick. So, like, a lot of the issues that, let's say, you would call conservatives, like, mostly Christian, and then liberals mostly, non-Christian, right? So conservatives,
I think that's actually not true. I still think the majority of anybody voting like Democrat or liberal in the U.S. is. I just was looking at a study. I think it's still majority are religious, actually. But continue. You're right in that you do see more atheists on the progressive side.
Yeah. So, the conservative side would tend to want, value societal things, things that would promote a healthy and safe and, society rather than individual privilege, right? And I think that the Christian ideals, doctrines do provide a framework that will lead to a more prosperous society.
I don't agree with that. I very much want a society that is thriving, where there's well-being and community and all of that.
Also, what are the values that are Christian values? Which values are those?
Well, let's start in the home. I mean, I
don't care where it starts. What are the values?
Well, I was going to start with marriage. I mean, all of us come from, a mother and a father, and I do think it would be beneficial. I feel for anyone who didn't grow up in a home with, a mother and a father who loved each other, loved them.
A mother and father loving each other dignity. Can do so and not be married.
That's sure.
Yeah.
Is
family,
and they can be married and hate each other.
Yeah, you're totally right, but that isn't, they can be Christian, married, and hate each other, but they're not fulfilling, what they're claiming to be. I mean, they're not acting in the way that they should. I mean, that's not
okay. I feel like we're getting off track. So let me put it this way. Let's say that I am married to a woman. Would I still want to be a Christian based off of what you're describing? Because it sounds like you're trying to say it should just be a man and a woman that are married, and this is your reason why you think people should want to be a Christian. So if I'm
Well,
married to a
I
woman,
don't.
why in the world would I want to be a Christian? That sounds terrible. Do you have a better reason for believing that Christianity is
Oh,
true?
why would it sound? Why would it sound terrible?
Because I would want to stay married to the person that I love.
And the Bible condemns non-heterosexuality.
Right. Yeah. Well, marriage, not just the act of two people committing to each other. That's different than marriage. I mean, marriage for most of recorded history is a religious institution. Yes, it comes with these governmental benefits and reasons for people to do it who are not religious.
That's not true, though, Nate. Most of the reason marriage existed was it was not religious. It was property exchange between men. It was exchanging a woman to basically enlarge in your territory. In fact, in the Bible, it wasn't even a religious thing. It was property exchange.
And by saying religion, you've admitted that it's not indigenous to Christianity. Marriage has existed in cultures far and wide throughout time.
Yeah, possession of, a partner to breed with does not necessarily make it marriage. That doesn't make it marriage. Marriage is a specifically
Nate,
defined
how did I
thing.
ask you why should I want to be a Christian, and now we've gotten to talking about breeding? I'm just so
That's
confused.
how I asked Natalie to marry me. I dropped to one knee and I said,
Yeah,
I would like a partner to breed with. And she broke into tears and we embraced and then we exchanged rings, Nate. It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
Yeah, will you be my exclusive breeding partner?
Breeder.
No,
yeah, it could be a breeder.
Well, but do you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm defining marriage as
Nate. I don't understand what you're saying. I don't understand what you're saying because my question is, why should people want to be a Christian? And you're talking about marriage. I am married. I guarantee you I didn't get married for reasons that have anything to do with religion whatsoever. Not a single one of the reasons I got married. In fact, if anything, part of me, if anything, I didn't do it right, I can tell you I'm doing marriage real right, and it's amazing, and I love it. I take it you're not married. Is this true? I'm glad. Are you married? Are you married, Nate?
Yeah, I am.
How long have you been married?
4 years.
I have a question. Sure? I just want to jump in if I can. So Nat and I, we lived together for 4 years before we were married. 4 or 5 years, I think. Were we a family before we signed on the dotted line, Nate?
We're getting into semantics here. I mean,
how is being a family semantic? Or were we a family? Were we a legit family?
No.
My wife and I and her kids were not a legitimate family because we hadn't signed a piece of paper saying we were now engaged in marriage. Is that what you're telling me?
You didn't mention that there were kids.
Oh.
I mean, yeah.
How did kids change the relationship?
Semantics. I mean,
how did kids validate that Natalie and I were a family before we were married?
There's clearly a difference between, two adults just living together, just being sexual partners and sharing bills, and then, the responsibilities that come with, raising, what would you say, raising a family is what we call it. Again,
but I would think by your model, if we lived together outside of wedlock and there were children involved, that would make it worse of a betrayal of God's model for marriage, wouldn't it?
I mean, like, dude, if you don't believe in God, like, I'm not going to sit here and try and hold you to some standard that you don't believe in. Like, no, I'm not going to tell you weren't a family with the people you consider your family. Like,
but here's the thing. Family. Here's the thing, Nate. It's if you think that he wasn't, we have to live in society with people like you who reject the idea of our relationships and say that they're not valid because you happen to believe that some God cares about our marriages, and yet you can't even offer evidence as to that being true. So that's why this matters. That's why Seth is asking you these things.
It's privilege.
Okay, well, again, everything is in the details, right? My personal argument is that marriage, the word marriage, is defined. It's a God created institution, and it's not just man woman. It's man woman and God. Like it's this divine institution.
Threesome.
Hold on.
That's not
Are
to
you?
say.
Yeah.
That's not to say that you can't. That's not to say that you can't have, relationships and committed partnerships with children and be a family and love each other and be happy. I'm not saying that at all. But
Hey,
I'm
Nate,
saying
Nate,
yeah,
if a Muslim came to you and said Allah had defined marriage and your Christian marriage is invalid because you didn't follow Allah's model out of the Quran, would you accept the Muslim's rebuke of your marriage? Would you allow someone else to invalidate your marriage from a different faith?
No, but I can refute Islam as a whole, right?
I can refute Christianity as a whole, pal.
Okay,
Watch
go for
me.
it. I don't. No, you can't.
Okay, then tell us, how do you know that Christianity? Nate. Oh my God, Nate! You can't prove or disprove that I'm God. So I guess I'm God now.
Okay, the ball's in your court now. Disprove it.
No, Nate. Prove that I'm not God. Prove that I didn't create all of this, and I'm just a timeless being sitting here talking to you.
Exactly. We can't prove or disprove it. That's what I said. You can't prove
exactly,
that you're
Nate,
not in some simulation.
Nate, why do you not have to disprove that claim then? We just said that we can refute it. We do refute it. If you want to tell us
you can't prove or disprove it.
You can't prove or disprove or any unfalsifiable claims, which is what that is. Can you please give us one reason to believe that Nate, give us one reason to believe that Christianity is true?
Okay, I mean, the Bible has a pretty good track record of fulfilling its prophetic claims. There's a lot of archaeological evidence.
It has a terrible track record of that, of all things you could have picked.
Look, Nate, if you're going to rely on the Bible, if you want to talk about God in the abstract as an unfalsifiable claim, that's a different conversation. But we know Adam and Eve and the garden story for the origin of humankind is bullshit. It is reflected even in our genome.
How do you know that?
It's reflected.
How would you know that?
Because we biologically are obviously evolved and related to the entire living world. We did not come from one man, one woman. We know that much of the creation story was borrowed from other earlier faiths. We know that no one has ever demonstrated who wrote any of the 66 books of the Bible. We know that the claims that are made that are wild claims, magical claims about 900-year-old human beings and giants and sea monsters and flying chariots of fire and supermen who gained power based on the length of their hair and all of these wild, crazy things. Not only are they beyond the realm of possibility, but they certainly haven't been proven or demonstrated. And we know that the Bible so often has failed prophecy. It stands in contradiction to cosmology, evolutionary biology, our own history.
Like what?
So we can discard the Bible.
Like the earth isn't flat.
Yeah, there's no firmament.
Where does the Bible say the earth is flat?
Did the astronauts fly through the firmament whenever they projected themselves off of the flat earth, Nate?
The firmament. You want to go to the firmament?
Just take, if the Bible, if one domino falls in the inerrant Bible, all of them as well begin to fall. Yeah, so if you're going to lean on a mythological book with crazy claims, anonymously written, largely debunked, you're not going to get much traction here.
I just muted him. Also, let's just point out, probably the most important prophecy was Jesus saying that he would return within the lifetime of those people. And has Jesus come back yet? I'll let you answer that, Nate. Has Jesus come back?
It didn't say he would return in the lifetime of those people.
Yes,
there are some
he said, in this generation,
not see death before the Son of Man returns.
that is an easily refutable claim. All right,
Great, do it. Ready,
what's that
go.
verse? What is
Mark
that verse?
13, Mark 13, 26 through something. If you're going to ChatGPT for this,
I'm going to the Bible.
We have another person on hold, so.
How about Noah's Ark, right? I'm sorry, penguins walked 8,000 miles, right? Penguins to board a giant stadium-sized boat in the desert of the Middle East, a boat built by a 500-year-old guy using only trees and tar before they floated on a global water event, which not only left no geological evidence, but only contradictory evidence. And then 8 people committed incest to repopulate the earth, creating over 20,000 ethnic groups in about 4,000 years. Do you think that's reasonable to believe, Nate?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of talks on that, and it's more reasonable than you seem to think for sure. But than any atheist would seem to think. Yeah, it's way more reasonable.
What about the fact that there was supposedly a huge group of people wandering the desert for 40 years, and there's zero evidence that any of those people existed? You would think that in all of that time, I don't know, go ask the archaeologists who haven't found shit.
What about the prophecy of Tyre? Tyre was supposed to be destroyed, reduced to rubble, so that the only purpose for the city would be to have fishermen throw their nets on it to dry them out. And yet in the very same book of the prophecy of Tyre, there's almost an apology because Tyre as a city continued to exist. That prophecy failed.
Okay, I
can do this all day.
I'll look into that one.
Yeah, you do that.
Okay.
Promise, I don't know. Are you good? You want to move on to Aleem?
Yeah, I think it's great if Nate wants to go try to figure out a solid argument for Christianity, because I understand, Nate. Thank you for going down that path with us. I know that's not why you originally called in. I really do appreciate you being willing to have that conversation with us. So if you're down, maybe call back next time one of us is hosting, or both of us, if that works out, and we can, you can actually be prepared and we can have the conversation.
Yeah, and we are delighted that you found someone with whom you can breed. That's always a good baseline for marriage.
Congrats to your breeder, I guess.
Healthy breeding partnership there, Nate.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for twisting my words there at the end. I know. All right. When are your shows regularly?
Every Sunday.
Every Sunday.
And actually, I see that you called in one time about women and gender roles. I would love to have that conversation with you tomorrow. I'm hosting with Jimmy over here tomorrow. So if you want to check that out, I'll be there.
All right. I might see you tomorrow.
Cool. Thanks, Nate.
Right, later, guys.
What do you mean women? Is he one of those guys that believes that God made women's feet smaller so they could stand closer to the sink kind of thing? I mean, is that the guy's take?
I don't know.
It
said in the call description that he's called in before to say that women should want biblical gender roles, that's one louder than just like, what we would call traditional gender roles. Biblical ones, that's
submit to your husbands.
Slavery, I guess.
I had this conversation. I see you, Aleem. Hang on just a second. So you and I see a lot of these, and they're wonderful people, egalitarian, humanist, progressive pastors who are Christians, who are coming forward to resist a lot of the hate, the bigotry, the overreach, even the Christian nationalism. And I so appreciate that. I really, really do. And the Southern Baptist Convention is this heritage organization of fundamentalist, Bible literalist Christian conservatives, mostly white men. And they are still arguing in the year 2026 about whether or not women can lead or serve in positions of leadership. What century is this? And this progressive pastor goes forward and he's like, well, wait a minute. I think God celebrates women. He didn't actually say that women could have a senior pastor position, but he's like, what about women teaching Sunday school when a man's involved? Can a woman share her faith with a man? I think the SBC is wrong. Again, he didn't go all the way, but he was bending just a little bit. And I think that is a biblical gender role, right? Don't speak publicly. Go home and tell your husband and let him come back and make the petition on your behalf. Why? Because you are a woman. That's a Bible gender role. So.
Yeah. There's so many variants of it. And
did you guys use the umbrella model where God's here? And
my mom was a pastor. So actually, that was kind of like an unspoken rule that was supposed to be happening, kind of just like in your head, that God is at the top and then men and then women and children and all of that. But my mom was a pastor, and we actually had a massive church split over it, because when it came time for my dad to pick his associate pastor, when the other one moved on, he ordained my mom. And it wasn't that people were upset that it was his wife. It was that she was a woman.
It wasn't a nepotism protest.
Right.
But it was a gender protest.
It was the gender. It was that was blasphemous that a woman couldn't be a pastor or be in ministry. But it's really funny to me to watch all of that, not to like talk about my family, but to have watched my mom have to struggle for that role over and over and over again. And her, honestly, doing so much of the work. My dad will say this, she was a much better pastor than he was. She was way more equipped to, work with people and all of that. He was good at preaching and writing books, but it was wild to watch all that play out. But then it's really funny because I see some of my family members who are very anti-feminist, at least they say that, and then they're also out doing podcasts and writing books and doing all the things. And it's like, but you're not content just being at home.
Every time Joyce Meyer, the millionaire evangelist, is coming to Tulsa in the fall. They're advertising it on billboards to preach the gospel. And I just want to show up and put my hand in the air and quote 2 Timothy. I do not allow or permit a woman to teach or have authority over a man. She must be silent. Not because I want Joyce Meyer silent, but it's your rules, Joyce. It's your book. I don't know how she tap dances around that.
But it's like everything else they cherry pick, because you can cherry pick it. You can say, well, that was for that time for that church in that moment. But then why can't we say that about a bunch of the other things that they use as an excuse to condemn other people for things? They pick what they like and they cherry pick it. Suddenly it's contextual.
Not to beat the dead horse, but your mom's preaching a sermon. She did sermons?
Yeah,
right?
She would.
So were there guys in the audience that were kind of eye rolling and giving her didn't take her seriously, or were those the ones who left?
No, I mean, most of them left, but then I would actively watch, especially if she were, this was cool of my dad in this context. When he was invited to speak at places, a lot of times at the end, he would ask her to come up and add on to what he had to share. And he would create that space for her. So I would watch him do that. And then the pastors come up and kind of like, okay, thanks. That was really cute at the end. And then shuffle her away and not take her seriously. We'd all go out to dinner after and they're ignoring her. They're turning and talking to my dad. What do you think the Lord is saying about this? And then actively ignoring her over and over again. So I watched even the women that were in the few that get to make it into some progressive position. They are still fighting for a voice. They're not taken seriously at all.
I just texted Natalie and I said, thank you for choosing to breed. We didn't really breed, but I don't know how else to phrase that, given his model for marriage. You find someone to breed with.
That's really
Aleem
wild.
is dialing in out of Canada. It says Aleem is a theist. You are on with Promise and Seth, and the world is watching and listening. Are you there?
Yeah, hello.
Welcome. What do you want to talk about?
Well, what I put in the call screener, I'd like to provide a dependency argument to show that God must logically exist. Have you seen that little what's it called? My little request there. What I have in, the way I'd like to do it. I'd like to give definitions.
Here's the thing. You're talking to potentially thousands of people right now, depending on how many end up watching the video. So you got to start from scratch here.
The description is
Oh, yeah,
for
no,
me to kind of
absolutely.
know what I'm in for, but I don't want to read your call to everybody. I want you to
Fair enough.
describe why you're calling. So walk through the steps.
Sure, absolutely. I would like to show that God logically exists. I don't believe I have any uh, material evidence for that. I have a logical argument for it, and I'd like to provide that. I'd like to give you definitions and start off that way, if I may.
Hey, Aleem, do you have birds?
I'm outside in my backyard.
Oh, oh. Well, I was just saying we've got a parakeet that escaped from somebody's home in the backyard. We're trying to capture to save its life. I was going to ask you for advice.
Out here.
If you're just sitting out back,
No,
that's a
it's
whole
not.
other conversation. So, okay, sorry, my fault.
Right. No, that's all right.
Well, that's fine. Just so people know what all the chirping is. Which God do you think would be demonstrated by logic?
Perfect. That would be the first definition, actually. It's kind of the question Eve always asks, like, what God do you believe in? And that's what I'd like to start with. So the God that I believe in is a God of classical theism. And I'd like to get a little bit more specific, if I may, because I know the God of classical theism kind of encompasses like Christianity, Judaism, Islam, and all that. So more like
A God of the Abrahamic faiths.
Yeah, absolutely. But the God of the Abrahamic faiths are depicted very differently in all the religions, right? So I'd like to go to the one that I believe in, if I may. So the God that I believe in is the God of the Islamic faith, and if I can go more particular, it's the God of the Shia Islamic Ismaili faith. So I understand, like in Christianity, there's a lot of denominations, and in Islam as well, there's a ton of them. That's the one I'm part of. I'm part of the Ismaili Shia faith.
Is it possible that the rest of your argument could apply to any other God claim?
I believe it does. However, like a lot of the God claims would say that God is omnipotent, omnipresent, all-knowing, big balls, and all that jazz. I don't believe that. I don't believe that God has any of those qualities or
But your argument doesn't necessarily. They could use the same argument and then go on to make a further argument for the specifics of their God. Correct?
Absolutely. In fact, I do believe that this argument is used in a lot of different faiths. And what ends up happening is that towards the end of the argument, they would start kind of focusing on their particular God and how this argument relates to their particular God, right?
Sure. Okay, so we're more doing a broad God idea.
I'd like to say it's a broad God idea, but it does come to in the end, it will be insanely particular about some things. For instance, if I may, the absolute simplicity, there being only one, it being non-corporeal, eternal, the eternal originator of everything that exists. These things are very common in most of the religions. In most of the Abrahamic faiths, those are very common. But then there's a lot of other things that get added on to that, right? Like omnipotent, all-knowing, all good, and all that kind of jazz.
Cool. Yeah, I guess just walk us through your argument, and then we're probably going to have to backtrack some.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Give me a moment here. So I promised myself I wouldn't do a preamble, but I'm going to say this once. I have notes. Obviously, this is not a script. Okay? That's all I want to say.
Just tell us.
All right.
I need you to walk us down this path a little more effectively. Take us somewhere worth going. Okay?
Sure. Can I start with definitions then?
Just start. Stop asking permission and just do it. We're ready.
All right. So I'll start with the definition of God. This is the God of classical theism. More specifically, it's the Abrahamic God, the Shia, which is a sect of Muslim, the Imami, which is another sect of Shia, the Ismaili, which is another sect of Shia, and then the Nizari. So it's very specific in that sense. I'm not sure if it's going to matter here, but I want to be very particular in what I'm doing here. So that's the God I believe in. The properties of this God is that it exists self-sufficiently. It is the fundamental source and ground for everything else that exists. It's absolutely simple. It's one, non-corporeal, eternal, and unrestricted. These characteristics also, like I said, do come up with the other religions, but the other religions tend to put a lot of other things in there, like all-knowing and all that. There are some terms I'd like to define. The first term I'd like to define is what it means to exist. Now, I'm going to put this very simply. Exist to me just means something that is, something that, for instance, I know I've heard Matt say a lot that dreams cannot exist because they're not part of reality. But to me, a dream exists because it is. Does that make sense at all? Or at least that's the way
In
I'd
that
like to
case,
use
if
the
somebody
term.
has a dream about God, then does that mean, like, if I have a dream about aliens, does that mean aliens exist?
No, ma'am. No, not at all. The dream itself
So
is
why do we
absolutely real.
I think you're not talking about the content of the dream, but the actual action of dreaming.
Yeah, which Matt would
Absolutely.
definitely say exists. I mean, I don't want to speak for him, but Matt would say that the action of dreaming it exists.
Yeah. If that's what he's, maybe I've heard him wrong. Then in that case, I'll absolutely change my mind on that. But this is what I would like to mean when I say exist, something that is. Fair enough.
Okay, continue.
Okay, cool. The next definition I'd like to give is what I mean when I say a reality, because like I said in my opening, I would like to prove that God must logically exist as the unconditioned reality. So I imagine you guys want to know what those things mean as well. So I'd like to start with actually what a reality is. A reality is just being. So for instance, a dream would be a reality because in the time that it exists, it is being. A person would be a reality. A stone would be a reality. Something that is being. Does that make sense? So when I say a reality, I'm not talking about everything that is in reality. I'm talking about a very specific, a very particular thing.
I have no idea what you mean if that's your definition of reality. Because if you're saying, like, if I wake up one morning, I'm like, oh, I dreamed blah, 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 blah. First of all, I'm remembering it in hindsight. I'm not, we know that it doesn't happen in the moment. It's once I wake up that I'm like recounting it or whatever. And we know what's happening with the brain when we're dreaming. So we can, that's what I mean by Matt would say, yeah, that process is existing. It's happening. And we study it. We try to. But I don't know what you mean by that reality exists. Do you mean that there's actually, I'm trying to think what's a weird, I had actually a very post-apocalyptic nightmare the other night, which was real fun. I had a melatonin, so I got real crazy. And I dreamed like all kinds of crazy stuff was happening. So is that reality? Was there actually an apocalypse happening?
Correct. So no, the contents of your dream are not the reality. The dream itself was the reality. So the dream is a reality in the moment that it exists until the moment that you stop dreaming it. That reality then stops to exist. So
for a moment, there was an apocalypse happening, you're saying?
No, you're going back to the content of the
Let me
dream.
rephrase it to see if maybe I'm tracking. My frequency here might be a little different. So if I watch a movie, the content of the movie, let's say I watch Lord of the Rings, the movie itself is a reality. It was a movie, but it doesn't mean that the story of the Hobbits was real, but the actual movie happening, that's reality.
Okay, if that's what...
That's not reality, but that is a reality. That movie itself is being in the sense that for the 3 hours that you watch, or the 3.5 that the extended, that you are, that movie exists within that time that it exists. So the movie is a reality in that it is being in the time that it is existing. They're kind of interchangeable.
If this is the definition we're using, if this is the definition that we're using for reality, and then you're going to go on to say that, like, this, it doesn't make.
I think.
Yes, but I'm saying if you're saying that it.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Thomas. I didn't mean to cut in there. I do believe that you're misunderstanding me. So I'm not trying to say that the dream is reality. I'm trying to say that the dream is a reality. It is in the moment that it exists. I would like to call it a reality. We can call it something else. We could say it is a being, because in the moment that it exists, it is being. It is being. I don't know how else to go with that.
But in that case, if we're going to end up if this is relevant at all to the argument you're about to make, then we could also be arguing for the existence of anything that I've had happen in a dream or in a movie, because that was a reality for a time. So I don't know that I'm willing to agree to this definition of reality, because it doesn't make any sense to me.
Right, because you're mistaking the content for the actual thing itself. So let's say let me try this. Let me try this. What about a hallucination?
We are getting almost nowhere, if I may. You have a very, 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 very hyper-specific God that you believe in. Is that accurate?
Correct.
In a few sentences, can you sum up why that's the God you believe in? I'm sorry, Promise, was that okay that I just jumped in? I didn't mean to put you there. My fault.
Please, maybe it's my homeschool education, so I'm not able to understand dreams and reality.
Few sentences. Why that hyper-specific God?
Sure. 2 sentences. I mean, the logical argument that I would like to provide would... Yeah, sure. The logical argument that I would like to provide is one of the main reasons. Obviously, one of the other reasons, and this reason the main reason with the argument has come a lot later. The original reason was because I was obviously born into the faith, and then it's just the argument. I can get into the argument. I just maybe I should do that. Maybe I should just get into the argument, and then when you guys have a question about, wait, what about this word? Why are you saying this particular word? And then I can get to the definition of that word. Does that work?
Yeah.
And if it feels like a waste of time, I could just leave. It's all good.
I was thinking the same thing. Aleem, in a few sentences, tell me why you believe in this hyper-specific God.
Because the argument I have logically doesn't leave any other choice.
Make the argument.
Thank you. I kind of do have to define what a conditioned reality is and what needs for this one.
I got nothing, promise.
Let's jump forward and see if there's more issues. And if we need to go back to
reality. Sure. Okay. A conditioned reality is any reality that is dependent upon another numerically distinct reality for its existence in any moment that it exists. So I can give you an example of this, and I will have you guys pick anything you want, anything. Just give me one thing, and I'll tell you why it's an unconditioned, why it's a conditioned reality, right? Hello, did I lose you guys?
Let's go with a book.
In a moment of self-amusement.
Let's say a book.
Yeah, absolutely. We can go with a book. So a book in any moment exists, and there are things that make it exist in that very particular moment. So if we look at a book, there are things within it, and there are things external to it that kind of give it the conditions for it to exist in the moment that it exists. So a book must exist if it has its pages, if it has its cover, the title, the writing, and all that jazz.
Aleem, let's allow that things exist. I want to know why you believe your hyper-specific version of God is the God that exists, right? So things exist. We can agree on that.
No, I understand, but things must exist conditionally. That's the point.
Okay,
I
fine.
understand that things
Let's say
exist.
God
I'm not
exists
denying that.
conditionally.
But the fact that they exist.
Hi, that God.
No, God exists unconditionally. God is the unconditional reality.
And it's a
book is
specific
conditioned
God.
reality.
How
God
do
has
you know
no
that?
conditions.
This is
How
just
do you
the
know the
calm. I
nature of
think.
God, and how do you know it's your specific definition of God?
Sure. We'll get into the argument then. So in the
No,
argument,
apparently we
start with
won't.
religious.
Apparently, we're going to listen to you talk about other things. How many times, Promise, have I asked him to tell us why it's this specific God? I think it's 3 or 4.
Yeah, and I think the
It's
frustration
the
here
argument.
is,
I've answered this 3 or 4 times as well.
is this the reason that you believe that a God exists? This argument?
This argument kind of cemented my reason for it. It wasn't the first reason I believed in it, but it's the one that I can at least show people. It's I can't tell other people I believe in God just because I have faith. This isn't a faith argument. This is just a logical argument. So it's the only one I can provide without saying I have faith.
Let's hear it, but I think you've got to find a way to communicate this a little bit more clearly.
I apologize. I'll try. All right. Well, we can start with a syllogism. So, premise 1, a conditioned reality exists. I think we can all agree with that. Yes.
Yeah,
Sorry, I was
I
listening
think
to you Philbro your way through what should be an easy answer, Aline. Go ahead. I'll give you another minute.
I'm so sorry. I have no idea what you're asking, Seth. Can you try asking me another way? Maybe I'm not trying to Philbro
Demonstrate
this. It's just the argument
in a way that doesn't require a game of philosophical twister. Demonstrate that your specific, hyper-specific God is a real God and the God.
So I cannot. I've even said that. I've said that the only way I can demonstrate this to you is through a logical argument. If you don't want the logical argument,
a logical argument should be able to demonstrate that God.
That's what I just started. So my first premise is a conditioned reality exists. If we agree with that premise, we can go on to the second one.
Here's the thing. I'm deeply concerned that this is just like the Kalam argument, basically. And then at the end, when we get to the part where therefore there must be a God, then my question is okay, now what? If there's gonna be special pleading involved at the end of this argument, I'm just gonna be so disappointed that we listened to all of this just for the God to have special privileges in this. Privilege seems to be the topic of the night, but in this argument. Is it going to come down to that? Or are we going to have to give your God special privileges in order for it to be accepted?
Oh my God, you're being strafed, Aline. Get under a desk.
Oh yeah, the plane. Sorry, dude, I'm outside. I didn't even hear it. I actually heard it after you told me it was there. Okay. Sure. No, there won't be any special pleading. This is just a deductive argument. I haven't we can go on to the second premise. I think it'll make more sense. There's 4 steps.
Yeah, I think this is going to go so much better if you just say them all, and then we'll go back. Perfect. Like I said at the very beginning, where I was we might have to backtrack, but give your argument.
No worries. I was just hoping to give you some definitions so that when we went through this, then you wouldn't have to wonder what I'm saying when I'm saying things like what I mean by a conditioned reality. Okay. So premise 1, a conditioned reality exists. So premise 2, for all states of affairs, the following disjunction must apply. The first is that there are only conditioned realities for all states of affairs. And then the second one, which would be the logical opposite of that, is that there is at least one unconditioned reality for all states of affairs. That disjunction, I believe, is true, unless you guys have an issue with it.
Why?
Why
do you believe that that's true?
Well, if we know that a conditioned reality exists, like your book, then for all states of affairs, that means for everything in all the cosmos and all things, there can only be 2 things that can be true. One, we know that there are conditioned realities like your book. So that means that there are only conditioned realities in all of existence because we know there's at least one. And the second state of affair, which would be the logical opposite of that, would be that there would be at least one unconditioned reality. The second state of affair is just the logical opposite of the first. I know a lot of people would say the second state of affairs should be that there are only unconditioned realities, but that's not the case, because we already know in reality
I can't agree
that
with I can't agree with that. The problem is I can't agree with that because we have systems. So what if everything is just dependent upon each other and that's how it exists? What if everything is just
Right,
conditioned
that falls under the,
across?
that falls under the first
So
one,
I don't.
where
So
there
I
are,
don't. So I don't agree to your premise that there's only two possibilities that exist. And poor Seth is dying right now. So we got to get to some kind of point.
I'm sorry, if you can't agree to that, like, that is just the most logical thing on the planet.
I
If we
can't, and I
know
just
that there
told
are
you why I
only-
can't. Nope, I just told you why I can't.
Yeah, I know. What you told me was the first state of affair. You told me that there are only conditioned realities in all of reality. That's my first state of affair.
I didn't tell you
just
that.
touched on the first half.
You asserted the idea that there can only be conditional or unconditional, and I'm saying that there might be a secret third option.
Really?
Yes,
Like
if we have a
what?
system in which things are dependent upon each other to exist, and that's how it works.
They are conditioned by definition. That is a conditioned reality by definition. If it is dependent upon something that is numerically distinct from itself, it is by definition a conditioned reality.
Then I'm not agreeing to any of that premise, if that's what I have to agree to. I do not agree to the idea that there are only conditional and unconditional things, and that it's like this binary choice in which there can't be just some things that
Can you
are.
provide me a third? Because these are just logical contradictories. Either something is conditioned or it is unconditioned. Can you provide me a third?
I just did. I don't know why we're yelling, though.
What's the third? I'm so sorry. I apologize. What's the third? I didn't hear it. I apologize.
I just said there could be a system where things are just dependent upon each other in order to exist.
Which means they are conditioned. That's the
Sure, if
definition
you
of
want to
being
use that
conditioned.
word for it, but I still don't think this is going to play into your. This is not working out for your argument. Where maybe I'm communicating poorly my position, but I'm not tracking with yours at all. But continue. I think this is why we need to just get to what is your actual argument here.
I mean, this.
Promise for me the birds have been making more sense. I got nothing.
I think the frustration, Aleem, is that you're calling in to do this like Seth calls it the Phil bro thing to two people who are not philosophers, not even into that. I want to hear like a compelling argument for the existence of a God that doesn't require this crazy mental gymnastics, because I don't believe that this is ultimately what convinced you. And so I don't know how this is supposed to convince us.
Imagine being a concerned, involved theistic deity who would want followers to believe, and then make these convoluted, crazy arguments to have his existence explained. I don't get it, Aleem. Thomas, would you be okay if we segue to the next call? Would that be okay?
Sure.
Yeah, Aleem, if you don't think that this God cares that we know if it exists or not, then I don't care to know. Like, if it's not, why am I putting in all the effort? Why do I have to go learn how to speak Phil bro in order to understand if this God exists or not?
Okay, a couple of things. One, I am not a philosopher. It took me 6 months to get through
I don't
this
think that
argument.
you are. I don't think that you are at all, or else I think I would be understanding your point by now. So nobody's accusing you of that.
So when okay. Yeah, okay, that's fair. I mean,
yeah, I think if you want to call back and have
to give you. Go ahead.
If you want to call back and have this specific argument, I say call Matt.
Yeah, I think so.
I guarantee you Matt probably has a memorized response to it at this point, because to me it sounds extremely familiar. I just don't know how to have this conversation back with you.
Yeah, I know.
In a productive way.
It's not the Kalam.
I don't know. I was trying to listen. Anyways,
If
I'm just
Halam
saying,
uses,
if
Halam uses the
Aleem, please
temporal,
let me make my point. If you want to call
I
back and have
apologize.
the conversation with Matt and use this sort of language specifically, and go about it in this way and with those exact definitions, I think you should do that. I don't think
Fair enough.
that this is something that I found compelling at all. And I'm hoping that there is an argument out there that would be clear to all people listening, or at least the majority.
I just,
Does that work for you?
yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
it works
cool.
for me. Sure,
All right.
no problem.
Thanks, Aleem.
Been a while since I've interacted with a random word generator, but that was 20 minutes of what the hell is he talking about? And he never did get remotely specific. I don't even mind a little bit of groundwork. But to say, well, something must exist, and then there's conditional existence, and blah, 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 blah. But he didn't even get close to a specific deity with a proper name, let alone an involved and personal God. And you're right. If it's not a personal God, why do I care?
That's my thing. I understand. I'm grateful for, people like I told him to call back and talk to Matt, and people that engage in these sort of debates, and they're so good at it. And I think it's important for people to hear those. But also, I don't understand why you're calling in to make an argument for something that isn't actually what convinced you. Because there's no way that you heard this and you were like, this is the thing that's going to convince me. And he said that that's not it sealed it for him, I guess. Or I think he was most honest when he said, well, this is the one thing I can call and share with others. But it's not the thing that convinced you at the end of the day. So how is this going to be convincing to other people? Also, I don't know why we got a little upset at that one point, but.
Little angry. April dialing in from Tennessee. April, you're on with Promise and Seth. Welcome to the line. What's going on?
Awesome. Thank you. And I just got to say, Seth and Promise, I love you guys. I listen to you all the time. And I was just on YouTube and saw y'all were on and said, those are the two I want to talk to. So
about
so
what? What's on your mind?
So I am somewhere between theistic and agnostic. I'm definitely atheistic to the God of the Bible, because I've listened to you and many others and Forrest and so on so many times that I've got half a clue about some of that stuff at this point. I grew up very Christian and spent the bulk of my adult life as a Christian until probably 4 or 5 years ago. I'm deconstructed very painfully. My husband passed away in a car accident 20 years ago. And then I had, I was in the middle of all of this world of Christianity and then grief, and it wasn't all coming together for me. It didn't make sense. And then my children, both are on the I don't know what I'm trying to say. They're both rainbow people. So, and that was sometime years after he had passed that both my kids came out to me in one way or another, and I did not handle that well. I was a terrible mom, and hopefully I'm making up for that now. But anyways, throughout all that process and getting remarried and divorced from a horrible person, all of that deconstructed me. But there was one thing that happened after my husband passed away that has kept me on the agnostic side, I guess, leaning towards theistic. And would you indulge me, or is it too much to ask to tell a short story of something that happened to me that I know that it's not evidence, but it's my personal anecdote, I guess, that makes me still cling to it, to there being a God, or at least being an afterlife.
Yeah. So first I want to just say, I'm so sorry for all you went through, and also so proud of you for getting to where you're at. And I wish you all the best in that journey continuing. The only hesitancy I have about you sharing that, I'm fine with you sharing it, if you're okay with us potentially questioning it and potentially
absolutely
criticizing it and all of that. Okay, cool. As long as
I welcome it.
Okay, cool. As long as you're good with that, then yeah, we can totally hear that. Seth, are you good with that?
I'm good. Let's do it.
Awesome. Okay. So it was a number of months after, my husband's name was Brian, a number of months after he had passed that I was in a very dark place, of course, and my place to really deal with a lot of the tears and such, because I had very small children, 4 and 6 at the time, was in the shower, and because I could cry and the tears would wash away, and I could get out and the kids would be none the wiser, right? So I was in the shower, but I was angry at God. I did not deal with his death like some Christians do, where they lean into God. I mean, I did, but I couldn't find him. And so I was angry at him because I was talking to the ceiling all the time. And I'm in the shower, and I was thinking about all the times that I was in the charismatic world, and I was thinking about all these people that claim to hear God's audible voice, and it happens all the time. I don't believe it anymore, but they would always say these things, that God spoke to them, and they heard him clearly, and yada, yada. And I'm like, well, that's never happened to me. I've had, people prophesy over me, and their prophecies, like, coincidentally would make sense, but it's, those things that could be true for many people, or, you know what I mean? So I said, God, I need to hear from you. I need to know that you've got him, because I could not bear the thought that I would never see him again. It was beyond my ability to cope. And forgive me if tears come, because it's 20 years, but I still love him.
You're fine.
So, thank you. So, I told God I wanted to hear from him. I wanted to hear his voice. And I didn't, of course. And I was angry. And I left the bathroom very angry at God and told him, of course, here I am again talking to the air, as always. And went about my day and forgot about the conversation. And eventually, later on in the day, I had to call the director of the children's church ministry, because I was supposed to lead children's worship the next day, and I was terribly sick. I hardly had a voice. And so I tried to call her. I couldn't get a hold of her, or I couldn't find her number, excuse me. And so I called a friend of mine, thinking maybe she had the number. But actually, I didn't even call her at first. I called a number of people, because she shouldn't have had the number. But all these other people were in the children's ministry. Nobody had that phone number who should have had that phone number. So I finally get hold of this other friend, and I said, you probably don't have this, but I thought I don't have anyone else to call, and I need to call this lady and tell her I can't be there tomorrow, and do you have her number? She said, well, no, but my husband does. He's going to go get it. While he's gone, she starts reminiscing with me, and I have to backtrack in time. She and I had been friends for about 8 to 10 years, I think 8 years, and we had gone on a church trip together to, you're going to laugh, Rhema Bible Institute, I think is what it's called. But
Bible Training Center. Yeah.
Rhema. Yes, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's probably close to home for you.
Right. Direct me into your, I don't mean to rush you, but direct me toward the encounter that you want to communicate. I don't need all the details about who had a number and who else didn't have a number, but tell me where we're going, if you would, quickly, April.
I see. I guess my point is that I shouldn't have had to call her. It was like such a coincidence that I called her. That's why I said that. But then the next thing that happened, when she reminded me of it, she said, in the middle of our conversation, she said, do you remember your sign? And I had been that day looking for the sign, God's voice, that I couldn't explain away. And I remembered in that moment. And what had happened was we were in a hotel room at Rhema, and we were about to go to breakfast. And I looked at the door as I was walking out the hotel room door, and there was a sign on the door, and it said, use elevators out of order, do not use. And I opened the door, and the elevators are outside the door, and I thought, that's a weird place for that sign. I closed the door, and the sign is gone. And I turned to her, and I asked her about it. She didn't know what I was talking about. We go back out. There's no sign, blah, 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 whatever. So she says, well, let's just chalk it up to that's God telling us to use the stairs. So we did. And we went down the stairs. We went to breakfast. Our whole church group was there in breakfast. And another lady walked over to us, started shooting the breeze. And in the middle of that conversation, she says, oh, by the way, the elevators are out of order. Don't use the elevators. All of this, we could not find a sign. So it makes no sense. But the elevators were out of order. It was confirmed. And then we did not talk about that again after that trip. For 8 years, we did not talk about that. And then the day that I said, God, I need to hear from you. I need to know it's you. I need to know that he's with you. I need to know. And that's the day that after she and I saw each other for 8 years, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, and don't forget Tuesday night rehearsals, went out to dinners together, never brought it up again. Never. Not till the day. And it makes me go, is there something more? That's
hang
all
on.
I'm saying is that there's
All right,
so much.
let me make sure I understand. Years ago, you walked in, you saw a sign that said elevator out of order, and then all of a sudden you
my
didn't
room.
see the sign, but you figured it was out of order. You took the stairs, and years later, you and that person reconnected, and the sign was brought up in conversation.
You're leaving out some details, but yes. I mean,
Yeah.
some basic.
Well, that's the gist.
But the sign was in my hotel room. It was not in the hall. It was not at the. It was in my room.
Well, let's ask ourselves, what is the most reasonable explanation? And maybe we don't
That's
know
what
the
I'm
answer,
saying.
but is a reasonable connection to make that a supernatural God miracled the sign or a message about the sign? Or did something else happen that we simply cannot explain?
Well, that's just it. I can't explain it. That's
And
exactly it. And
And how would
it
you
happened that
connect
day?
that to your husband specifically? Because that person was at that crossroads in your life then, and you reconnected later?
Well, no, we connected all the time. We connected every week, several times a week, and she had never brought it up again until the day I asked God for a sign. Now, whether that's God,
So I think
whether that's
it, April, if you knew for a fact that a God doesn't exist, how would you explain all of this happening? What would you say that it was?
I don't know. That's just it.
Would
That's
you
the
would you maybe
opposite.
say that it was a coincidence?
The bringing it up, yes, but why did I see it?
Is it also
Why did I even see it? You know?
Who knows? Who knows? I will tell you this. First of all, I'm so sorry for what you experienced. I can't imagine a loss like that. But even in times of not having great loss as a motivating factor to connect different dots, I experience much more extraordinary coincidences that I could easily read into if I was back in the way I used to think. But Seth's question of what's the most reasonable explanation, I think nailed it. And to me, nothing you said sounds anything like anything supernatural. And then if we take it one step further, maybe one step back even, if you were to say like, oh, a God gave me this experience, first of all, why did a God make it so like not obvious and so like honestly, I'm so sorry. I don't want to take away from you, but it sounds like not very meaningful, not very special. It wasn't even like, oh, my husband and I loved birds and then this bird came and flew on my shoulder, like I've heard from some people and stuff like that. It's this kind of like really weird story that was like barely pieced together. To me, it sounds like out of motivation to experience some sort of something. You were asking for a sign. And you conjured one up, I think, is what happened there. But if we're taking it one step back, then you're saying that God did this for you, but there's so many people who have also experienced great loss and have asked for signs and didn't experience anything. And there's people that have been experiencing like intense abuse and God did nothing. So we're having to acknowledge that, oh, a God chose to like connect these really weird dots for you.
What if it's not a God?
Experience. What would it be and how would you figure that out?
I don't know. I just like that makes me think about something more. Like, what if it was my husband? What if there's just something more that we don't know about?
Do you feel like
what if that
the
was
message, the critical message that your great love would have for you would be elevator out of order?
No. No,
I mean, I'm not trying to be. I'm not trying to diminish your grief.
No, you're fine.
I have to phrase it that way. Look, if I was to pass away and I was given the opportunity to communicate through the planes, through from the ethereal supernatural plane to the physical plane to my wife, I would leave her a love letter. or I would have her discover a letter that I had written before I died. It would be a photograph
That
of us
happened.
together that would have been put in a very
That
conspicuous, miraculous place. I would not say elevator out of order, please use the stairs, and then make the sign disappear. You understand that?
Yeah, yeah, I do understand that. But the funny thing is, and it's odd that you even said that, because I did find a letter. I found it's an 8th grade picture of him, that because we were high school sweethearts, and I hadn't seen it in years. And after he passed, like in the closet, in a coat he used all the time, was a picture of him from 8th grade with a note on the back, and that note said, "If I could be with you, I wish I could be with you, but I can't, so I will just tell you I love you here." And it was on
What
a
is,
picture
but
of him
what
from
is the
8th
most,
grade.
what's the most probable explanation for that? That he had written a note on a photo that was taken when he was young and it existed
Yeah,
on something that belonged to his person, or that there is a supernatural other that with agency left it in a coat pocket for you to find somewhere down the road. What's the most likely
well,
explanation?
I mean, I suppose it's likely that he left it in his coat pocket and I didn't know about it.
April,
Um,
where I'm going is we are meaning seekers, right?
you're right.
We look around, we scan the horizon constantly for things that imply agency. If I walked into the grocery store 100 times to get food for the week, and during just one of those times, I bumped into somebody I went to high school with who happened to live in my town, I would potentially lean into this idea that, whoa, what are the chances that we would have bumped into each other? The universe must have brought us together. God must have wanted us to meet. And instead, this was just the law of probability, action and reaction in the real world. Now, if I'm a meaning seeker and I'm yearning for that connection, or I think, wow, this feels special, you can see how I might lean more into that, even if there's not any
Sure.
evidence to back it up, right?
Yeah, I can see how you would. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
I think the main thing, April, that I would say is if it's possible that there are 100% natural explanations for it, then why would I jump to even suspecting that it's something supernatural when the supernatural has not been proven in any way? That's where I land in all of these
Promise
things.
the truth of the matter is, because I want it to be true.
Yes. I think that's really honest.
See him again. I want that.
Yes. And I think actually what's a way better way to look at this is that is actually a sign of your love for him. That is a sign of how much he means to you and continues to mean to you. So you don't have to let go of that part. Don't let go of the part of yourself, like Seth said, that is looking for meaning from somebody that gave you so much meaning. I think that's beautiful. So you don't have to lose the beauty of it in order to embrace skepticism in life.
That's
There's
one of the
still
most
a lot
honest
of beauty.
responses to that kind of scenario that I've heard. You know, it would balm my grief to feel that he was watching over me. And I think that's totally understandable, April. I think that deserves compassion and a big warm hug from both of us because we get it. I think we've all experienced loss. I hope this isn't an overstep, but I'm going to say it out loud. I've debated it. But I will say, if I was an omnibenevolent God, I wouldn't have allowed your husband to be stripped away from your life in the first place. And I certainly wouldn't be reduced to leaving notes and photos and whatnot as some sort of that. I wouldn't make that my miracle. If I was an omnibenevolent, omnipotent God, I would have never allowed your husband to be stripped out of your life to begin with. And I think that would have been the true miracle, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I do. I just wonder, though, like, if there's things that we don't know about when we pass. And clearly, I'm okay with being, I don't know. I think what I'm not okay with is saying that I will never see him again, full stop. I think that's what I'm not okay with. I think I'm okay with saying I don't know, I might not.
Hey, I don't know.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's totally fair.
I bring this example up with Christopher Hitchens when he was dying of esophageal cancer. And I think he was asked by a correspondent on 60 Minutes during an interview. It was one of those last interviews. And they said, well, what happens if we do go on after this life? And he winked the way that he did. And he said, I rather like surprises. And I told Natalie, if we do go on, I'll find you. Right? I mean, I think that's just fine.
Absolutely.
If we go on, I'll find you. I'll find you. So.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I think I can live with that.
April,
I can live with that.
you? Yeah, and I love your honesty. I think that's the most important part here. Have you heard of recovering from religion? I know we talk about it a lot, so maybe you have.
I have heard of it. I've heard of it on different shows that I listen to with all of my atheistic and agnostic friends on YouTube. But I've never done anything about that.
Just go to their website. Just spend a few minutes over there. I think you'll feel how I felt the first time I saw it. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to use all of these resources. They have so many helpful things, and I'm not saying like, oh, you need help or anything. Just like to add to your well-being in life. I think that they could be a really excellent resource for you for processing some of this stuff and thinking it through and connecting you with people who have been through very, very similar circumstances and have had to think through these kinds of things. So I'll just leave you with that. I would check that out. And I really appreciate your call.
They're also, I don't know if they're still around, but there used to be an organization called Grief Beyond Belief. And it's not that they're like, there is no God, now let's talk about grief. But it's talking about grief if you are not operating inside a theistic circle. They'd be worth a Google search, Grief Beyond Belief, to see if they're still operating. Okay.
Okay. I will do that. Thank you.
All right. Big hugs from both of us, April.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, April.
One thing I want to say, thank you, promise. One thing I want to say, I will see you in Huntsville, Seth.
Huntsville for Rocket City Reason, the conference in the third weekend of October.
Yes, sir.
All right, you know what? That's a date. I'm going to cue a big freaking hug for April. So you grab me, okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Yes,
two.
Sir.
One from
I can't
me.
wait.
All right. We'll see you.
Promise. Thank you both. Bye-bye.
Bye, April.
We can understand the appeal. That we scan the horizon for signs. I see this in the clouds. I see this in nature. I see this thing happening in my life. Are they with me? Are they are they around? Are they in the walls? Are they whispering in my ear? Are they in my dreams? And I think there's a lot of people, and I will say there are some pretty unpleasant non-believers out there, some atheists who can be very caustic and dismissive and non-humanist about people who have even a tertiary God belief, who lean into that stuff during times of crisis and grief. And I think these things deserve our compassion, understanding why it happens. And then I think remembering that we are actually, I think we cope better with grief rooted in the real world, leaning on each other. I mean, promise, when I hear you talk about people going through crises and they're leaning into their faith, the response isn't, grow up, right? I stopped believing in Santa Claus when I was 6. But to say, oh shit, somebody's trying to deal with a tremendous heartbreak and they're scanning the horizon for meaning, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the thing, is that religion actually does stop us from that process. It often provides an answer to satiate a negative emotion so that we don't have to fully process it. Instead of having to turn to community, having to face fears or ideas. And I don't know, I felt obviously a ton of grief in leaving a lot of those answers behind. I have in my book, I have a whole chapter on grief because I think it is a fundamental part of being a human, is grieving. Every day I experience grief in different ways. But when religion gives you these answers, then you're just constantly stopping it there instead of actually having to engage with the grief. And oftentimes that makes me feel more empowered as a human because I feel it gives more value to the here and now. It makes it more valuable that I'm hosting the show with you right now. I don't know when we'll get to do this again or if we will. And so therefore I try to stay in a mindset of like, this is it. This is it right here and now. Make the best of it, make the most of it. I know we have a mutual friend who probably has also been a good example of teaching us that, dying out loud and all of that. But I think it's just so important to find the value in the moment that's happening now, because it's all we can be sure of. Not because we have some like maybe some days, but just like, this is what we can be sure of. How do we process that?
I saw somebody online, and I'm a dog lover. Like, I need Linus and Gracie to live forever. Okay, I need them to live forever, but I know they won't. And these people online on Facebook had just lost a dog. And they phrased it that, I forget the dog's name, but she walked across the rainbow bridge, and I know that this person doesn't believe that when their dog passed away or was put to sleep, walked across a bridge made of a rainbow into a dog heaven and frolics until we all pass away and we get to play with our dogs again. I don't think that person remotely believes that. But the story of that becomes a kind of self-medication. And I think it's understandable why we do that. I think, I don't know that I'd phrase it that way. If I did, I would want to do so with a little bit of a wink, that, well, I know, but, I like the story of it. But I think people who lean into that type of happy ending, we have to understand that they paint the edges on the bright edges on the dark cloud as a way to deal. It may or may not be a healthy way to deal, but it deserves our compassion, and these people deserve our empathy and our human hearts.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's any better to say to somebody, well, they're in a better place now, or to say, well, they're not in any place now. I think both of those, it's not the time. It's not that's not what we should be saying.
Their grief is not your soapbox. Now, there's a time to have conversation.
That's perfectly said.
Let's see. I've got a theist out of Hungary. His name is Robert. Robert, you're on the line. The Sunday Show with Promise and Seth. Are you there?
Hello. How are you, Seth? Hi, Promise.
Welcome. What's on your mind?
Hello.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about why I became a believing, church-attending Catholic after living as a outspoken atheist for 35 years.
Hit it.
And it's kind of like what you hit on at the end, that I started believing maybe we should color on the edges of the cloud, and maybe keep on hope that maybe there is something after life, and the universe is not just aimless and random.
Why Catholicism's happy ending? Why that silver lining specifically?
Well, one side, I took it as fate that I was born Catholic, and I never practiced, nor my parents, but
But do you think that Catholicism, do you think that it's true?
Yes.
Okay, because that's more interesting to me than if the idea is just like, oh, let's just have hope. First of all, my position is not that we should have hope and like hold out for a silver lining. I think we were more talking about the rhetoric surrounding grief. So I don't think people should be like, well, on faith, let me just believe that this thing is true. So I would be very interested in hearing why you think Catholicism specifically is true. That is interesting to me.
Yeah, well, I get your opposition, but that is kind of my position, that we should believe on faith. Like, I don't.
Why Catholicism?
Well, I felt its message convincing, and something that I would want to believe.
So then that's not on faith, though. If it's convincing, that means there are reasons behind it.
Well, there is reasons to believe, but I don't think there's any objective reason why I can state to you that it is true for a fact, and here are the perfect argument for why the nameless watchmaker or all that bullshit that I listened so many theists call into these shows and try to reason their way out of a paper bag, and they failed miserably.
So this argument could be used for any belief then?
Yes.
So it could be used for, like, I think that women should not have any rights.
The argument that it would make for a better world, yes, you could make that argument, but I think you would fail. I think I could poke 100 holes into it.
So then you think so are there good reasons to believe Catholicism specifically, or is it just faith? I'm just so confused. I feel like we're going back and forth. Seth, maybe you have some insight.
No, I think it's a good question. Like, if you're saying you can have a reason, but you can't provide us evidence, I mean, having faith would be, I guess, a reason in more of the abstract. Is that what you mean? Your faith has made it real to you, but you can't demonstrate it in terms of evidence?
Yes, I can't demonstrate it, that it is factually true that Jesus Christ died for your sins, came back to life, and went up to heaven. I cannot demonstrate that.
So if you can't demonstrate it, what would be a compelling reason for me to embrace it?
Yes, so I think my reason for embracing it, after learning about it and parting with the many misunderstandings that I brought up with myself as an atheist, is that it is basically about being forgiving for everyone, and even the people who hurt you the most, trying to give grace and let go of hatred and hurt to
if I may, Robert.
Yes.
That's not indigenous to Catholicism. There are so many other faith cultures and cultures beyond religion that speak about forgiveness.
You can do that without faith.
Kindness, grace, humanity, humanism. That's not a Catholic thing. Even if it exists within, it's not indigenous or wasn't originated by Catholicism.
Well, I'm not so sure. Maybe you can show me where is that historically, if there is the similar idea about forgiveness for any transgression against you by others.
Well, I don't consider that necessarily a moral teaching either. I don't think forgiving, if someone rapes someone else, I don't think forgiveness is necessarily a required or moral position whatsoever.
It's not a required one.
I think you said forgiveness, like unconditional. Was I wrong?
Yes, but yes, but it's not a failing if you don't do it, so it's not required of you to forgive your rapist.
So if earlier cultures like the Sumerian civilization, which far predates the writing of the Bible, etc., had ethical codes about treating each other well, if we see Buddhism, which talks about mindfulness and acting in pro-social ways to maximize peace and minimize suffering, all of those exist far beyond, in many cases, before Catholicism. It's almost like if a Christian tells me they want the 10 Commandments on display because God, the good values, love and honor and be respectful and keep your word and don't harm other people, those are Christian values. But those values exist well beyond and have existed long before Christianity. You can find some of them in religion, but they exist so far outside and elsewhere and often before. So why is that stuff Catholic stuff?
Well, you mentioned Sumerians, whose main moral teaching was an eye for an eye. And you mentioned Buddhism, which my studies mainly claim that their core concept of morality is karma. So if I do something wrong is going to happen to me in the future, or something bad is going to happen to my next life.
Okay, so
So
now we're getting beyond
not-
culture. And I promise I'm going to shut my mouth in just a
That's
second.
not really
Promise, but hang on. So
really,
then if we're going by the
forgiveness.
letter of Christianity, if I then get into a relationship that is a same-sex partnership, I should be stoned as an adulterer. If I have a disobedient child, I can then execute the child. I believe in hell theology, all of these other things. I mean, if you want to get into that, these are not moral teachings, but they exist within the religion. So you have cherry-picked some of the more egalitarian ideas and said, okay, well, this
I wouldn't say
Abrahamic
cherry-pick.
faith.
Don't think it's fair to say I cherry-picked it. The message of forgiveness is the central message of Christianity.
That's your opinion. No, Robert, that's your opinion, because I know plenty of Christians that would not say that that's the central message at all, and that's what we mean by cherry picking. There is no central message about Christianity.
Would say that? Sorry, would you
but
say
that's the point. Like
there are Catholics
I'm
would say
I'm
that
sorry
it
that
is
you,
not the central message?
Robert, I'm in the middle of the first sentence that I've really had in this conversation.
Sorry.
There are Christians that believe all kinds of things. Catholics, Christians. I know you guys don't even believe that each other are right, and that's part of my point. Here's my argument for you. I am somebody who is unconvinced that a God exists because nobody has given me reason to think that it's true. I don't want to believe things that aren't true. I have found ways to live that make my life great, the life of the people around me better. I can practice morality. I can practice things like empathy and compassion and forgiveness and things without the Bible that contains, as Seth was pointing out, some super immoral things like slavery, like condemning women to be stoned for things that men get away with in the Bible. And I can also do it without the Catholic Church, which is one of the most corrupt, disgusting institutions that has ever existed. So why would I then need to convert to this if I have it all without? Like, if I have all the things you're mentioning without it, why would I want to add in the disgusting parts?
So you don't have to. You can certainly live a righteous and moral life without becoming a Christian and lead a life that you can be proud of and that will be praiseworthy by God after you are dead. You don't need to become a Catholic. That is not our faith. That is just a very nasty, fundamental evangelical message that anyone who is not Catholic or anyone who is not Christian will go to hell, or that if you are a Hindu, you will go to hell. The Catholic Church no longer teach that, and that is one of the reasons.
Then Robert, why should anybody be part of the Catholic Church then? If they don't need to be, then why should they be a part of something that is so corrupt? It takes people's money. It protects predators in masses, hoarding wealth while claiming to worship the guy who says it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich person. Meanwhile, the Vatican looks like freaking the sun. It's so bright with all the gold. So I'm just so confused. Why would you advocate for Catholicism of all things? If, like you said, it's not even necessary. If it's not necessary, why are you siding with the bad guys?
Because I don't think they are the bad guys. So, for example, you said that why would I need to become if it's not necessary? Like, you can learn English without going to school on your own, but it's easier if you just go to school and there are people who can help you and teach you how to become better. So the church,
if my choice is to go to school where I'm going to be groomed and abused and then I'll have to cough up money all the time and get on my knees and be subservient to some invisible, undetectable being, or I can stay at home and get the same education, I'm going to stay at home.
Yeah, but I'm not so convinced that if you stay at home and try to educate yourself, you will always get the correct understanding. Of course,
correct understanding. How do we determine the correct understanding? Now we're getting somewhere.
Okay, so I think that the core message of Catholicism is forgiveness and grace for others and treating everyone as a fellow man who is created in the image of God and having equal value. So one of the concerns I have in recent years, looking at the rise of fascism and Christian nationalism, is that when this has been a big abandonment of organized religion, is that people start to create their own understandings of what is good, what is righteous, and fascism and racism and the othering of gays and brown people, and the understanding that, like, for
And you
example,
think the Catholic
MAGA
Church is the
movement.
solution to this? This almost seems
Yes.
comical to me.
Well, it is a universal church that is around the world, has membership.
The Catholic Church
So-
has utterly failed at showing that it is beneficial to anyone other than pedophiles and rich people at this point.
Well, that
It can't
that
even
was
protect
one.
its own congregants from its own clergy members.
Well, I don't
In
think
fact,
that's any
it
longer
has
the case.
historically done the opposite. So if I were looking around and I were like, man, society has the problem, which I don't even agree with your assessment that we need religion. We don't need religion for this. It is when you give the power to religion to somehow dictate what people can and can't do with their own personal autonomy, we have a problem. You have the Catholic Church trying to say that people can't get remarried until a year of this and that and this special annulment and all these things. The interference is absurd, and it's based on this idea that they think that they have the right to do that. That's a perfect reason why we shouldn't want Catholicism involved in society, of how it's harming.
Yeah, well, I actually think that the strict process of annulment is actually a good thing, especially if we are talking about marriage with children.
I
Because
don't think it's a good thing at all. I don't think it's a good thing. So why are you right and why am I wrong?
Yeah, for example, if it's just a governmental marriage that the two parties can at will dissolve basically with one or two court hearings, I think that's a process that is too fast. There should be counseling involved. That should be consideration for the children and an attempt to salvage a marriage.
Robert,
and I think that's an important role that the church can have.
I'm saying this in love as a brother, but how is somebody else's marriage any of your goddamn business?
Because they have children and as a citizen
how
of the same
is somebody
country,
else's marriage any of my goddamn business?
Because there are children involved. And as a citizen of any
Let's
country,
say it's an abusive marriage and the children
Yep.
are in danger. The
Yep, sure.
right thing to do would be for these adults, at least one of them, to be able to make a decision on the benefit of their behalf and the behalf of their children without having you or me or Promise or the Catholic Church or any institution telling them what they can and cannot do privately and personally. Let me back up, Robert. Is the Catholic Church of biblical faith?
Well, can we stay on this topic before that?
All right, that's fine.
Because I
That's
don't
fair.
agree with your
Go
discussion.
ahead. Go
So
ahead.
first of all, the Catholic Church does support if one of the parties wants to move away from the house because it's dangerous, they can.
How is
and
it
if there
any
is
of the
indeed,
Catholic Church's goddamn business, Robert?
because these are the rules that
The
people
Catholic
can rely
Church
on when they
has
should abandon a
instituted-
marriage.
Right? So a different faith says, okay, we're going to say we have a dominion over to how you define your relationship and when and where you can split and what those logistics look like. Can you see the overreach? This is a very personal family, a personal decision, personal relationships.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that there should be no role for institutions.
I didn't say there was no role for institutions, but I will say when it comes to the relationship itself, the determiners are the people in those relationships without interference.
Yeah, but when we are talking about a marriage with a family, so children, then
Robert, why should I trust the institution that cannot protect these children from being abused by its own clergy members? Again, this is so bizarre that you are using kids as a point to defend the Catholic Church. Of all things, I wouldn't have even brought up the topic of kids if I were you.
And where I was going with the biblical faith is if you were trying to divorce the Catholic Church from the Bible that it teaches, right? It is the foundational document. You have now removed the entire foundational document from the faith. And so that removes all of the teachings of Scripture, good and bad. It removes hell theology. Depart from me, you who are cursed, into a lake of everlasting fire. That's in the Bible, and it's not the Old, it is in the New Testament. And then we have questions like this one, Robert. Your church forbids promise to become clergy. If she was Catholic and she wanted to go into the ministry to become a priest, your church would forbid her from doing so because she's a woman. Is that egalitarian equality, celebration of human beings?
I think she would have many roles to fulfill in the church.
I don't give a shit about the other roles.
Robert, if I
wants to be a priest.
Yes, and if I went through all of the same training, and if I went through the same education, and I had the same qualifications other than I'm not a man, why should I not be permitted to do that?
Because you could be a nun, and that would be basically the same thing.
Oh my God, Robert, if it's basically the same, then why couldn't I be Pope? If I had the same qualifications, then why could a woman not be Pope? Please give me a good reason for it, a good answer for that.
My bishop vote would be for you for Pope. I would vote for
Thank you.
Pope Promise. Yes.
Thank you. It sounds
Supreme
nice.
Pontifex. Yes.
I'm not sure why, but it just seems to me that in history, the followers of Jesus were men. And seems like that the role of men and women have in the church.
You are going to get no traction on this one on this show, buddy. You're going to get no traction with, hey, dudes ran everything for the longest time. Ain't going to work out very well for you, man.
I don't think dudes have to run everything. But in the church, I think,
maybe it's wrong. If maybe it's wrong, then why should we be entertaining Catholicism?
Well, one reason that I understand that why women can't be priests is that the priest is a personification of Jesus when he's at the altar making the sacrifice. And Jesus, from some reason, materialized as a man. So,
and then why should that have to be replicated? Why wasn't Jesus like, no, anybody can do this? In fact, you should make space because that's how we treat people. We want to treat all people equally and fairly.
Maybe he could have done it. That maybe he could have said to the apostles, "My fellow man, here is 3 women. They are also gonna be priests." Maybe he could.
Do you know what else he could have also said? Hey, someday you guys are gonna start the Catholic Church, and you're gonna do it in my name, and then you're also gonna use it to protect predators, to protect Nazis, to protect all kinds of corrupt people, and you're gonna make it one of the wealthiest institutions in the world right after I say that it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. You're gonna go completely against that. So hey, maybe don't do some of those things. He could have added that in too.
Yeah, so we can move on from the feminist argument to the institutional argument.
That's a good idea.
What I'm interested in, Robert, is there a chance that the entire Catholic Church is one gigantic penile implant?
I don't understand your meaning.
Sorry, I was being a little bit sarcastic there. I'm just saying, based on a book written by sexist men, run by sexist men, how is this an egalitarian society that celebrates women?
If that's your attitude, that any book that was written 1,000 years ago should be turned on the trash pile.
Depending on what the book says.
Right. They probably should. And we definitely shouldn't base our modern day lives on those when we can write better books today. I can write a book on morality that's going to be 1 trillion times better than the Bible just by not putting anything in the book. So, yes, you're onto something by saying that we shouldn't take books that are thousands of years old as something that we should base our lives off of.
But shouldn't we try to improve our understanding based on them? Shouldn't we look at them and see what is valuable in them? And
I have done that. I have used the Bible. I have used the Bible and I've examined it and used my analysis of the teachings to decide to be a better person and to abandon that belief altogether. So yes, I did use it to do better. And I think
But you
you should
found-
examine the Catholic
Give me
Church
promise.
and
You
do the same.
abandoned
No,
every
that's
teaching
all I
that
have.
is in the Bible.
You
Everything
found
found
that is
better
in
something
the
ones.
nice
Bible,
in the Bible
you
is
are
not a
opposed
compelling
to.
argument. You find something nice
Sorry.
in the Quran. You find something nice in the Vedas. You find
That's
something
what she
in the
said.
Bhagavad Gita. You find something in a philosophy book or a book of fiction. All right, wonderful.
But that's not what she just said.
I think that's what you're saying. You said you can
Yes.
take things
Yes.
and
I don't
it's
need
good.
the Bible. I don't need anything in the
I don't
Bible.
think you
If the
need.
Bible,
I-
if the Bible was wiped off the face of the earth and we did not have it, people would still be able to live moral lives, and they would still be able
Of course,
to have
maybe.
well-being.
Yeah, sure.
So
and-
we don't
and-
need Catholicism is the
My
point.
position is that there are valuable teachings in the Bible. And is your position that there is nothing good, there's nothing worthwhile that the Bible can teach you?
My position is that the bad parts of the Bible, of which there are plenty, and the inaccuracies and how anti-science it is, ruins any little good parts, because I can find those good parts in other places without needing to cherry pick out all of these horrible things, and without needing to support really terrible, corrupt institutions that harm people every day.
Okay, then the
Preach,
problem is
preach
that
on,
you're
priest,
just have
promise. I hear the good word. I'm sorry.
The problem is
don't
that
raise your
you
hands
just
in
have
the
a bad
Catholic Church, do you?
understanding of the Bible, because it's really not anti-science at all, especially not by the understanding of the Catholic Church. There are scientific institutions.
Robert,
that
you
are
guys
run by
believe
the
that
Catholic
this stuff
Church.
turns into flesh in your mouth. It is
No,
anti-scientific.
it's not.
I'm
We don't
sorry.
actually. No, we don't. That's not true. That's not true.
I'm sorry.
You
The
don't.
Catholic
We believe
Church
in
doesn't
trans.
hold to the miracle of
Nope.
transubstantiation. Are you making that
Yeah, but that
declaration here?
doesn't mean. Yeah, but that's not that it turns into flesh. It's not actually. It doesn't
Okay, what's it turn
physically
into?
flesh. It's the. I'm not sure about the words in English, but it turns into what is essentially the blood and flesh of Jesus Christ. That doesn't mean it physically turns into.
Robert,
It turns into in
Robert,
essence,
come on.
meaning that under the physical layer that is still bread and still wine, there is something essentially that transubstantiates. That's
Thank
so
you.
it's not.
Yes, that's yeah. I think I'm ready to move on to the next
What's
caller. And
anti-science about that?
Robert, if you want to call back sometime and we can talk about whether the Bible is based in science or not, I would love to have that conversation. But I think that requires a different phone call, unless Seth wants to continue, because we
I'm good.
only have
No,
time
no.
for.
And you can't listen to Promise anyway because the Bible
Nobody's
disqualified her to
nobody's
teach
running
you.
away, Robert.
She needs to go home and tell her husband, and he has to come
That's
back
not
and
true.
make
There
the
are many.
argument.
There are
Robert,
many
have a
theologians.
wonderful
Robert, we
day,
have-
though. You are much
Robert, we have
appreciated. It's not flesh, except when it's
but
miracled
it's
into
flesh and blood.
Jesus' flesh. Someone
So we
explain
have
how
13
that's...
minutes left, and we have a caller that's been on here for forever. So Robert, you're welcome to call back.
It's not flesh. I wrote about this in Sacred Cows. There is a group of people, and they're kind of wacky. Okay, they're wacky anyway. So I mean, I wasn't saying it's their findings are true because they're a credible organization. But I found the experiment was interesting. They are, to date, the only ones I've been able to find that actually tried to test the physical properties of the wine and the bread when they were ingested. I forgot exactly what their methodology was, but they were checking to see, holy shit, is this stuff genuinely miracled? When it hits the gullet and goes down, does it become the blood and flesh of Jesus? And of course, the properties of the wine and the bread did not change. And then the Catholic Church does what it does this with papal infallibility and all these other things that it tries to rationalize its way through. It's like, well, it doesn't actually miracle into blood and flesh, but there is a miracle and a transformation in a way that we can't properly describe or explain, but it is still somehow a miracle, even though it's wine and bread. I swear to you, the Catholic Church is a freaking punchline. Is it Deja or Deha who's dialing in? How do I pronounce your name?
It's Deja, Seth. Thank you.
Deja, welcome. You are on with Promise and Seth, and you are the final
Deja-
call.
Hello.
Let's do it.
Yeah, Deja, I'm just going to give you a quick warning, an announcement for everybody listening. In 10 minutes, we're going straight into our other show, Calling It Now. So everybody should stick around for that so you guys can stay tuned. So I'm just warning you. I'm so sorry if we have to cut your call short. Unlike Robert's assertion, we're not running away. You can totally call back another time, but we will try to get somewhere in the conversation.
It's okay. I wasn't trying to take up too much time anyway. I did want to say something though. Promise, I had a conversation with you and Matt a few weeks back, and I did not live up to what I aimed toward, and I just want to apologize for that. And
Lucky for you, I don't remember.
I have a couple questions from listening to the last few calls that I just want to ask really quick, and then I'd like to talk about the whole consciousness thing that I gave the topic about. I was wondering, in your scientific views, if you still hold a proposition of a possibility that any transcendent being may exist that you don't have evidence for currently.
I have no idea if a God exists or any transcendent being exists. I don't know if it could or not either. I have no idea.
And then also, like, would you consider it a possibility that the Christian God is real?
A possibility that the Christian God is real? It depends on how you define that God. If you define it as all powerful, all loving, all knowing, then no.
Okay. I just kind of wanted to get a standing, a little bit more understanding of where you guys are at. And then forgive me, I'm not very well spoken or too intelligent, but there's just thought processes that I have that I'd like to like have a conversation about to see what can be acknowledged or agreed upon. And dealing with concepts of metaphysics and epistemology, my first idea or premise would be something like consciousness is self-evident. Would we agree on that?
Sure, I guess.
It's a tad esoteric, but okay, we'll start there.
Okay, because when I come down to thinking about things, I'm looking at like what is the number one thing that would be known to everyone that does exist. I feel like that would be number one. And then from there, I would say that most knowledge beyond immediate awareness itself is inferential knowledge.
I don't know if it's inferential, universally inferential. And if we're examining evidence, do I accept what the evidence in that case would provide, or would I infer subjectively that the evidence, I mean, I don't know, that to me seems much too broad and not necessarily a helpful assertion that it's all based on inference. I think you'd have to go a lot deeper. It's more complex than that.
I suppose what I'm moving toward is this idea that evidence itself is something that we encounter through experience. And so there is a kind of limitation.
What do you mean
that
evidence
we're
itself?
up against.
Evidence of what?
So for instance, if we were to try to agree upon something being a certain color, all of us are working with, to some degree, similar faculties of the eyes, but they are so variant among each of us. There are variances. And so we're coming into a convenience of agreement about what a color is, whereas one person might be colorblind, and we have no way of proving to ourselves whether the red that I see is the red that you see.
Great.
So
where are
if
you
you're
going
saying,
with this?
Oh, forgive me, Promise. So you're saying she might see blue and I might see blue-green based on our biology and our how we perceive color. There could be variances. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
All right, go ahead.
So then moving on to worldviews that we position ourselves within, whether it be like a scientific naturalist, empiricism, or some theistic worldview, we are all positioning ourselves in these worldviews based on nature versus nurture, combined with
the inferences that we're making through our conscious experiences.
I think there's a reasoning factor that is missing from your argument. And what I'm hearing is there's almost a democratization or an equalization of all claims or perceptions because they are all subjective and products of inference. And I think at some point we have to say, well, no, if we're following an evidentiary chain, then all things are not equal. And then we can go through and test and retest to see what has merit and what does not.
Yeah, like colors. I'm struggling to understand you bringing that up as an example because that's something, you're right, as far as the words that we use to describe them. In fact, they've changed, some of the words that we use to describe different colors over time and what that color ends up looking like. But the wavelengths, which is what we're basically naming as colors, we can measure those. So there are things like, I'm just concerned that you're trying to do well, we all experience different things. So what I experience over here makes this thing real, because even though it's different than what you think you experience. But maybe that's not where you're going.
We understand the nature of light. Okay. We understand how the eye and the brain perceive color, and they perceive color very differently. And you are now taking a monster leap toward a consciousness, a deity. Are you talking about a god, a specific god?
I'm not. I don't really have an aim for this aside from, in humility, the reason I called in to have this conversation and bring these things up is because I wanted to pick your guys' brain and see what you had to say in order to try to work through my own thoughts and glean from you. So, like, what you're bringing up is actually helping me out in my chain of thought in these exposings. So,
well, what are we thinking about beyond color? I mean, what's your end zone? What are we helping you think more about?
The way that I'm seeing things currently is I have this idea or view that everything that happens in life, even the experience of our own bodies, is a conscious experience. And so, all the ways that we interact with the world, for instance, the light that we see is on a very limited spectrum of the entire, or limited wavelengths of the entire spectrum of light. And so I kind of see this hubris or audacity in any worldview to posit that they're so sure when there's so many limitations that we butt up against. And so one of my other thoughts in that regard is that death itself is an inferential experience. Like, we see people that we love and care about and people that we don't know pass away, and we see a ceasing of bodily functions, and we see decay in their flesh, and we develop ideas and theories and imaginations about what this means, what happens for that person afterward, what might happen for us. And we're all also confronted with this reality that we exist in, where this thing that we perceive and have inferences about is imminent for each of us.
Well, I've got to be honest, I really don't know what you're trying to.
We're rolling toward the end of the broadcast. I think you've given us enough to chew on here, and our audience certainly. But I don't know where else to take this other than to get ready to segue to the next broadcast in the lineup. Promise, did you have anything before we?
No, I think sorry, I keep saying this to people, but if you want to call back when it sounds like this is a conversation that, like, for me to even hear your point, we would have to continue a bit longer. I'm sorry that it was at the end of the show, but we wanted to at least try to get the conversation in. So, but yeah, feel free to call back. I'll be on with Jimmy tomorrow, actually, and you're welcome to call then.
Thanks, Deja.
Okay. Thank y'all for having the line open and giving me your time.
Yep. So, I mean, I heard he was talking about death, and then he started talking about what is death, but he was actually speaking about post-death. That's a different conversation.
I feel like it's a kind of conversation I've had with my friends when certain things have been consumed, and you're like, what about this and what about that, and that could be cool, and
Yeah. Well, and so very
I don't know.
often
I don't know where to go with
talking
it.
about, he was talking about worldview. I'm like, well, accepting some evidence isn't necessarily a worldview, or not believing in something for lack of evidence is not a worldview. And so that's a connection that I didn't make. I think there are a lot of terms that we're missing. Skepticism kills gods.
I forgot that I was wearing this, but that's kind of perfect. This is my countryside chic attire.
Somebody was
in the
like,
middle of nowhere.
do you believe, or can the God of Christianity exist? And I go far enough to say, well, having examined that specific deity from that specific religion, I can say that God does not exist. If we talk about the God of Islam, or we talk about this God or that God being debunked, but if we're speaking more in the abstract, could a God exist? Maybe, but he's not interested in me, so why bother, kind of thing. So, Promise, you're amazing.
Agreed.
I'm going to have Promise on my show later on this month. We're going to talk.
Can't
so
wait.
if you like this pairing, you like this matchup, we're going to do that. Calling it now begins in just a few minutes. Skepticism.
This is on my merch shop.
Kills.
I'm just answering the questions in the.
What's the website for that? Just Promise something.
I don't know. It's in my link tree somewhere, guys. Good luck. Thanks to our producers and moderators. I know. I just realized, I should say something.
Bye, everybody. Be safe. Be good. We'll see you later.